Chapter 540. The Dragon Valley was just like the Phoenix Nest, but the Dragon Valley was not in the Netherworld, but in the Heaven Realm. The difference between the two was like heaven and earth. However, the dragon god bloodline that Yi Tianyun displayed was truly shocking. Such a pure bloodline, perhaps only the Dragon Valley could possess it, right? But the truth was not so. Yi Tianyun was not from the Dragon Valley. He denied it, but no one would believe him. Such a pure dragon god bloodline, other than the Dragon Valley, where else could it be? Baron's expression was extremely ugly. The power that he was so proud of was completely suppressed, and he could not display his full power. Unless the one he faced was not Yi Tianyun, or the dragon race bloodline in his body was destroyed, he would always be suppressed, unable to display his power. Baron climbed up and looked coldly at Yi Tianyun, but his heart was trembling. You must have come from the Dragon Valley, otherwise it is impossible for you to have such a pure dragon god bloodline. So what if I am not? Yi Tianyun ignored their questions. In any case, he was mistaken for someone from the Dragon Valley, so be it. In any case, he did not care. He could only apologize for making the Dragon Valley take the blame. Fortunately, he was wearing a fake face, so there was no need to worry about being recognized. However, if the heavenly netherworld divine nation thought that it was an invasion from the Dragon Valley, then it would be a tragedy for the Dragon Valley. Our heavenly netherworld divine nation has never done anything to you. Why did you come down? Baron said sternly, insisting that he came from the Dragon Valley. I said before, I am not from the Dragon Valley. Whether you believe it or not, it has nothing to do with me. It is just that you provoked me, so I can only do this. Yi Tianyun walked over step by step. The power of the dragon god bloodline gradually released, causing Baron's heart to tremble. However, Baron did not retreat. He quickly took out an elixir from his storage ring and fiercely stuffed it into his mouth. After taking it, his eyes turned red, and his body rapidly swelled. In the blink of an eye, he had doubled in size. His whole body spewed out a white aura, and he was gasping for breath. The giant dragon phantom behind him suddenly grew larger, and its power increased explosively. Berserker Divine Pill. Yi Tianyun recognized this pill at a glance. It was used to forcibly increase one's strength, and the side effects were extremely strong. However, it was enough to increase one's strength by a large margin in a short period of time. Under the suppression, his combat power still showed explosive growth. 400 million. 500 million. 550 million. 630 million. His terrifying power skyrocketed crazily. In fact, this was still considered weak. If it wasn't for the suppression of the bloodline, it definitely wouldn't just be this value. Instead, it would soar to 700 to 800 million battle power. His current battle power was already calculated in the hundreds of millions. In the past, a battle power of a few million was already heaven-defying, but now, a battle power of over 100 million was considered normal. This was the difference in cultivation. The later levels could be said to be like ascending to the heavens with each step. One could imagine just what sort of concept a Holy Lord level combat strength was. If the Saint Master wasn't powerful, he wouldn't be trembling at the mere mention of this title. Just a single finger was enough to crush everything. 630 million battle power. The effect of this Berserk Divine Pill is not bad. Although the effect was good, after the effect was gone, the side effects came one after another. Especially since he had taken so many of them, it was very likely that his cultivation would fall to the first or second layer of Spirit King stage. It would take him a few years to recover. However, he didn't have this opportunity. Yi Tianyun wouldn't give him this opportunity. Even if it's the dragon god's bloodline, I will suppress it. Baron roared and madly sprinted towards Yi Tianyun. His speed was much more violent than before. Every time he madly stepped on the ground, it would cause the earth to shake. If it was outside, a large depression would have already appeared on the ground. Seeing such violent power, everyone began to cheer. Kill him! Kill him! We must defeat him! Even if he is from the Dragon Valley, we will still crush him. Lord Baron, crush him! Our heavenly netherworld divine nation is the strongest. They shouted one by one, They were very excited as if they had been injected with chicken blood. They were all infected by Baron's violent aura and felt that this time, they would definitely win. Baron fiercely attacked with his bare hands. Although he didn't have a weapon, his violent fists were better than any weapon. "Get out of my way!" Baron roared and heavily smashed his fist over. The phantom dragon behind him roared and merged into his fist. In an instant, he had reached the realm of one with the dragon. The fist that could tear through the air was enough to shatter the void. A red light flashed in Tianyun's eyes. He didn't dodge the attack. Instead, he lightly shifted his feet and leaped up to meet the fist head-on, meeting Baron's attack head-on. After everyone saw this, their eyes revealed a bit of ridicule. Meeting Baron's fist head-on, this was courting death. Boom! Fist against fist. When the two fists collided, a terrifying vibration sound rang out. With a pala sound, Baron's arm emitted a crisp sound. Blood continuously sprayed out, splashing out in all directions and dyeing a large area red. Baron's expression changed. In an instant he was sent flying. He rolled several dozen times before gradually coming to a stop. His entire arm was crippled. Many of the dragon scales on it had fallen off. It was a tragic sight. On the other hand, on Tianyun's side, there was nothing at all. There was no pressure on his fist. The crushing power caused everyone to suck in a breath of cold air. Was this still the power of a human? Even Baron, who had taken the Berserk Divine Pill, was inferior to this intruder? Your strength is not bad, but it's still a bit weak. Tianyun shook his fist. He was completely fine. I've tested my strength. It's time to end this. Tianyun's figure flashed. In an instant he appeared in front of Baron. He stepped on his body and crazily began to extract the spiritual power from his body. Baron also wouldn't waste this experience. He definitely wanted to extract as much as he could. There was no way he would miss this opportunity. But before long, Ming-Chen actually turned around and fled to the side. He wanted to escape from this circle and help Tianyun pass this trial. He didn't think that Ming-Chen would choose to escape. This was a great humiliation. Ming-Chen also didn't want to do this, but even someone as powerful as Baron was crushed. Ming-Chen might be stronger than Baron, but to be able to crush him so easily, he absolutely couldn't do it. In this case, what was the point of fighting head-on? Want to leave? Tianyun's eyes turned cold. He must kill Ming-Chen. How could he let him escape? With a light touch, the invincible shield on Ming-Chen's body disappeared. This meant that he could attack at will, and it also meant that he had joined the battle. Chapter 541. When the invincible shield was removed, Ming-Chen quickly turned around and slapped his palm. The Netherworld Divine Palm, which contained the terrifying Netherworld fire, covered more than half of the altar of heaven. There was no way to dodge it. Idiot! That's what I've been waiting for. Ming-Chen sneered. He wanted Tianyun to join the battle, which was equivalent to 2 against 1. He wanted to give Tianyun the illusion that Ming-Chen was trying to escape, so Tianyun would definitely join the battle. This was exactly what Ming-Chen had planned. As soon as he joined the battle, he immediately launched a counterattack. The power of this palm is not bad, but I'm afraid that your friend will have to bear it. A ghostly voice sounded from behind, and Ming-Chen turned his head as if he had seen a ghost, but what greeted him was a heavy punch. Boom! Ming-Chen's whole body was sent flying, and his chest caved in. He spat out a mouthful of blood and fell heavily beside Baron. At this time, the Netherworld Divine Palm came down and exploded. Boom! 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 The overbearing Netherworld Divine Palm's power soared to the sky, setting off bursts of flames that burned everything nearby. After a while, the two of them gradually appeared. Both of them had to take the attack head-on, and it looked quite embarrassing. Both of them crawled up to resist the attack. Although they were still in good condition, it was not a good feeling to have to take the attack head-on. You think I can't see that you are trying to lure me into letting you in? Then I'll do as you wish. After all, 2 against 1 is no different from 1 against 1. Tianyun had already seen through his plan. Ming-Chen had pretended to run away in a panic to lure him into the trap, and Yang Kai could see through it at a glance. However, he still allowed Ming Chen to join the battle because the current situation was not difficult. It was 2 against 1, so there was no pressure at all. Both of them stood up one after another. Both of them were seriously injured. Fortunately, Ming Chen was wearing a strong armor, otherwise, he would have been killed by Yi Tianyun's punch. Baron's situation was even more serious. One of his hands was crippled, and his combat power was greatly reduced. In a short period of time, 2 Spirit King stage experts were killed, and another 2 Spirit King stage experts were severely injured. Only now did they truly realize how heaven-defying this invader was. He was able to take on all of their experts by himself. Who are you? Why did you invade our heavenly netherworld divine kingdom? Ming Chen asked. In the end, he still wanted to know the identity of the intruder, so that they would know who their real enemy was. You'll find out after you die. Yi Tianyun's eyes flashed, and he quickly rushed towards them, not continuing to talk to them. The moment Ming Chen rushed over, a long sword suddenly appeared in his hand. As soon as it appeared, it displayed a terrifying power, almost shattering the surrounding space. It was a divine artifact. Heavenly Nether Divine Sword, low-grade divine weapon. Indestructible. Able to release the strongest heavenly Yin flame to burn everything. Yi Shiwen hadn't expected that the Nether Heaven Divine Sword would be here. It was obvious that the Nether Heaven Divine Sword had come here to purge the heavenly Yin fire from the phoenix nest. Everything had been prepared, but who would have thought that Yi Shiwen would be able to deal with it? Since they didn't go back, the heavenly Nether Divine Sword was still in his hand, so he had no choice but to take it out. Just as he pulled out the sword, he pointed it at Yi Tianyun and shouted, "Die!" They didn't want to know Yi Tianyun's identity anymore, they just wanted to kill Yi Tianyun on the spot. It would be better if they could seriously injure Yi Tianyun, but now that they were facing a terrifying enemy, they had no choice but to use their full strength. In this slash, Ming Chen released all of his power and poured it into the heavenly Nether Divine Sword. Immediately after, a terrifying shadow of a demon rushed out of the sword, completely condensed by the heavenly Yin flame, and waved its huge palm towards Yi Tianyun, trying to crush him. The power of this slash was as high as 800 million combat power, far more than Baron who had consumed the Berserk Divine Pill. This was the power of a divine artifact. It could exert its power to the extreme. Yi Tianyun's face was solemn. 800 million combat power was indeed fierce, but it was still within the acceptable range. The next moment, a shadow quickly condensed behind him, as if he was magnified a dozen times. Immediately afterward, a giant axe appeared in his hand. It was the thunder axe that dropped after killing Nyo Tunshin. The thunder axe has the power of violent thunder and lightning. It has the power of extreme yang. It is slightly inferior to the immortal fire, but after wearing the set, its power instantly changed greatly. Ding, equipped thunder armor. Ding, equipping thunder boots. Ding, successfully equipped thunder armor set. Attack has lightning attribute. Defense increased by 15 times. Power increased by 18 times. Consume 10,000 crazy point to release thunder heaven breaking slash. Cooldown time, 1 hour. Boom! The sky was instantly covered with dark clouds. His whole body was covered with the power of thunder and lightning. He looked like the son of Thunder God. His comprehensive strength began to greatly improve. 400 million combat power. 500 million combat power. 600 million combat power. 700 million combat power. 850 million combat power. 900 million combat power. His combat prowess skyrocketed. With the Dragon God bloodline, crazy mode, and the ultimate suit, as well as the effect of the phantom possession, a terrifying combat prowess exploded. It directly crushed the opponent's combat power in one fell swoop, more than 150 million combat power. With the basic attributes of Void Spirit Stage 8th level, the combat power was superimposed by 16 times. It was impossible not to go crazy. But is this the limit of damage? Of course not. Thunder Heaven Breaking Slash. Using 10,000 crazy point, Yi Tianyun instantly released the skill of the set attribute. He heavily chopped down with the axe, and the shadow behind him also heavily chopped down, increasing the damage by 3 times, 1. 1 billion combat power. Roar. A thick thunder dragon accompanied the phantom as it twisted its thick body and pounced forward, piercing through the demon's hand in one fell swoop. The tyrannical power of thunder and lightning instantly burst out, scattering the demon's soul and turning it into ashes. Ming Chen and the others' face changed. They didn't expect that even with divine tool, they still couldn't deal with it. They can't imagine how strong the opponent is. Not good, run. Ming Chen grabbed Baron and fled, but with their speed, how could they escape the impact of the Thunder Dragon? At this critical moment, Ming Chen's eyes turned cold, and he quickly threw Baron away and shouted, "I'll leave it to you." Baron was startled, but he could only brace himself and rush forward, releasing the last bit of his power. His whole body suppressed the Thunder Dragon, and the shadow of the dragon appeared again. But as soon as it appeared, it was completely engulfed by the Thunder Dragon and disappeared from everyone's sight. Chapter 542. Ming Chen threw Baron out, but Baron did not choose to give up. Instead, he chose to release his strongest attack to resist Yi Tianyun's attack. Boom! A violent explosion resounded, and Baron was sent flying. After rolling dozens of times, he barely stopped. His body was charred black, and it looked terrible. However, it seemed that he was still breathing. Being able to survive such a powerful attack, it was enough to show that his skin was very thick. Master Baron! Their hearts sank to the bottom, but most of them were angry at Ming Chen for what he had done. Most of them were Baron's subordinates, and now that Ming Chen had thrown Baron out, they were furious. I didn't expect that at the last moment, you would throw your own people out. You are really heartless. Yin shook his head and slowly walked over with his giant axe, his eyes full of coldness. This is his last duty. Ming Chen retorted. If you hadn't killed your way into our heavenly underworld altar, do you think we would be in this situation? Ming Chen betrayed his teammates, but he still said it in such a righteous manner. It was a big wonder. Is that so? Then go down with him. Yi Tianyun disdained this kind of person the most. He obviously did something wrong, but he still spouted nonsense. Immediately he slashed again. Although he couldn't use his skills, his power was still very amazing. In an instant, his battle power soared to 900 million. The dense heavenly lightning gathered together and formed a thick lightning dragon. With a roar, it rushed toward him. At this time, Ming Chen's eyes flashed. He did not immediately dodge or immediately counterattack, but rushed in front of the dying Baron. Everyone thought that Ming Chen had found his conscience and wanted to save Baron. Immediately, Ming Chen waved the heavenly underworld divine sword in his hand and fiercely stabbed down. He said in a cold voice, "Lend me your last strength." After stabbing down, a huge demon phantom condensed again, stretched out a big hand into Baron's body, dragged out his soul, and forcibly pulled it out. When Baron's soul was dragged out, he let out a blood-curdling scream. The injuries on his body had already made him numb, but when his soul was dragged out, he still had to endure the pain of his soul being torn apart before he died. After the demon fiercely pulled out the soul, it chopped the soul in two and swallowed it. The instant he swallowed it, his power immediately soared, and he even possessed the power of the dragon race. Even his appearance somewhat resembled that of a baron. In that instant, his battle prowess rose crazily. 700 million battle power. 800 million battle power. 900 million battle power. In an instant his combat power was on par with Yi Tianyun's. However, this was not the end. The demon phantom also dragged out a small part of Ming Chen's soul, cut it off, and swallowed it into his stomach. His strength increased again. 1 billion battle power. 1.03 billion battle power. This was clearly a sacrifice of a soul. After the demon devoured the soul, its strength would greatly increase, and its physique would instantly expand. This definitely did not seem to be the limit. As long as one continued to sacrifice souls, or if the one who released it became stronger, they would definitely be able to release even more terrifying power. Everyone thought that Ming Chen was here to save Baron, but who knew that he was here to sacrifice Baron's soul? Go to hell! Ming Chen roared, and the devil phantom's hand reached out and pinched Yi Tianyun's lightning, then squeezed it hard. Boom! The terrifying lightning was crushed and turned into countless stars. It didn't feel any pressure at all. Then the demon phantom stretched out its hand and continued to attack Yi Tianyun. Let's see if you can survive this time. Ming Chen's face was pale. He had sacrificed a small part of his soul, so his situation was not too good. Fortunately, it was not a Spirit King stage expert who used it, or else it would be really difficult to deal with him. You, Baron stared at Ming Chen with wide eyes. He felt that Ming Chen's action was a disgrace to him. He didn't expect that the one who stabbed him in the back was Ming Chen. Ding. Successfully killed Baron. Reward, 160 million EXP, 10. 000 CPS 2. 000 SBS. Reward, Dragon Devourer's Spear, High-Grade Sacred Tool, Baron Armor, High-Grade Sacred Tool, Baron Boots, High-Grade Sacred Tool, Dragon God Bloodline, 4th grade, Rare. It's really pitiful to be killed by your own companion. I will borrow your power to deal with it. Yi Tianyun's eyes flashed, and the power in his body instantly increased. The demon phantom behind him waved its attack again, ready to counterattack the demon that rushed over. Baron didn't have Dragon God Bloodline, but he still dropped Dragon God Bloodline. It doesn't necessarily mean that the other party has it. Dragon God Bloodline Fusion. Ding! Dragon God Bloodline upgrade to 6th grade. Next level requires 50 million CPS. Boom! After the fusion, Ming Chen's combat power sword. 950 million combat power. 1 billion combat power. 50 million combat power. Suddenly the combat power soared to 150 million. The power of a 6th grade bloodline was really overbearing. Under such circumstances, Ming Chen's combat power surpassed the demon's. This is the power given to you by your companion. Bear with it. Yi Tianyun swung his axe fiercely, and the phantom behind him also swung its giant axe. Lightning instantly gathered on the giant axe, shining with amazing energy. While the devil's palm was split in half, and the huge devil was also split in half. The remaining lightning penetrated the devil's body and fiercely attacked Ming Chen. Ming Chen's face changed dramatically. He didn't expect that his opponent's power was still so strong. It forcefully broke through the demon's power. Even with the power of a divine artifact, it was still ruthlessly suppressed. After he obtained the heavenly netherworld divine sword, he was able to fight against cultivators who were at 7th layer Spirit King stage. However, he didn't expect that he would be suppressed by the demon's power. I will kill you! Ming Chen roared and stabbed the heavenly netherworld divine sword into his body, and then a steady stream of blood essence flowed into the sword. Roar! Suddenly, a black hole appeared in the sky, and an even bigger demon tore through the black hole. Its terrifying eyes stared at Ming Chen, and then it stretched out its huge palm and slammed it down. Bang! The overbearing lightning was smashed into pieces. The demon's combat power was as high as 1.2 billion, which was enough to make people shiver in fear. Chapter 543. The huge devil waved its huge palm and smashed Yi Tianyun's attack, then waved its huge palm again to grab Yi Tianyun. The huge palm was like a rolling black cloud, covering the entire top of the heavenly altar. The surrounding cultivators' faces changed. They didn't expect Ming Chen to be able to summon such a terrifying devil. If Ming Chen was caught, his soul would be devoured. Hand over your soul. Ming Chen smiled bitterly. His current situation was not any better. Even if he won this time, it would take a long time for him to recover. This time, he sacrificed too much of his soul to summon this devil. Only by doing so could he summon a stronger devil. The best proof was the fact that Ming Chen destroyed Yi Tianyun's attack with a single slap. Now, his combat power reached 1.2 billion, breaking the record again. Compared to Yi Tianyun's previous skill, it's a level higher. Hand over my soul? Let's see if you have the qualifications. Yi Tianyun's eyes flashed with a cold light. He was about to burn his blood essence in exchange for a stronger power when a beautiful voice sounded in his ears. Ding! Heavenly Cloud's mansion successfully annihilated the most evil forces. Reward, 200. 000 EXP, 500. 000 CPS, 100. 000 SPS. Ding! Congratulations to player Gitionyan for successfully breaking through to 9th level Void Spirit stage. He didn't expect that at this time, a lot of rewards would suddenly appear in front of him, allowing him to successfully break through to 9th level Void Spirit stage. It was as if his companions of Heavenly Cloud's mansion were always supporting him. Even if they were far away from him, they were still working hard for him. It's good to have you guys here. Etienne's mouth curved into a warm smile, and the released power instantly soared after superimposing a level, and then superimposing the crazy damage 16 times mode. All of a sudden the damage was explosive. 1 billion combat power. 2 billion combat power. 3 billion combat power. 250 million combat power. When he broke through from 8th level Void Spirit stage to 9th level Void Spirit stage, his combat power increased by more than 10 million. On top of that, his combat power increased by 16 times, which was more than 200 million combat power. Boom! The thick thunder dragon let out a roar and bit fiercely, crushing the hand that was covering it. Then, it fiercely rammed into the hand, directly shattering the entire arm. Roar! After the demon's arm was shattered, it actually shrank back in fear. The black hole in the sky quickly returned to its original state, and everything returned to normal. However, this huge lightning dragon did not stop there. After twisting twice in the air, it opened its mouth and ruthlessly bit down. This is impossible. Ming Chen's pupils shrank. He didn't expect that he would still be suppressed by his opponent even after risking his life. It was as if everything had erupted from behind, and it had become much stronger all of a sudden. He was baffled and didn't know what had happened. Boom! The thunder dragon didn't care about his shock and fiercely smashed down from the sky. Thick bolts of lightning spread out in all directions. A miserable scream came from the dazzling white light, but it was quickly covered by the loud thunder that resounded through the 9 heavens. The surrounding subordinates were dumbfounded. This battle had shocked them too much, especially the Spirit King stage experts in the distance. Their hearts tightened as they asked themselves if they had to face this attack. How did their heavenly netherworld divine nation provoke such a monster? Not only did he invade their territory alone, but he also killed 4 Spirit King stage experts in a row. Even with the help of a divine tool, they still couldn't suppress him. Doesn't this mean that the cultivation of the invader is at least at the 9th level of Spirit King stage? Which forces elder or sect master level expert came here? After the white light dissipated, Ming Chen was lying on the ground, his body twitching, and it seemed like he was still alive. Yun walked in front of him and looked at him coldly. Finally, Ming Chen was killed by Tianyun. You, who are you? Ming Chen still had his last breath, but he still wanted to know Tianyun's true identity before he died. Tianyun bent down and whispered to Ming Chen, "The force of the mortal world, the force that destroyed the Netherworld Empire, Heavenly Cloud Mansion. Back then, you told me that if I came to the Netherworld, my strength would be nothing. How do you feel now?" "It's you?" Ming Chen's eyes widened, and in the next moment he was completely dead. He was shocked to death to hear such a shocking piece of information when he was on his last breath. Ding! Successfully killed Ming Chen. Reward, 180 million EXP, 11,000 crazy point, 3,000 SPs. Reward, Netherworld Divine Palm, Netherworld Divine Art, Netherworld Dragon Possession. Reward, Netherworld Fire, mid-grade Earth level, Netherworld Token, rare, Netherworld Key, rare, 50 times EXP card, rare. Ding! Consecutively killed 4 Spirit King stage experts. Reward, 50 million EXP, 50 million crazy point. Tianyun didn't expect to get additional rewards for consecutive kills. The reward for killing someone of a higher level was gone. Although the Nether Dust was very domineering, it was built on the Nether Heaven Divine Sword, so it was not very domineering. If Tianyun didn't have the Heavenly Nether Divine Sword, he wouldn't have any problem crushing him. This was the advantage of having a high cultivation level. Who would dare to stop him? All your things are mine. Tianyun took all their storage rings. He also took out the storage rings of Nyo Tunshin and the others. Spirit King stage expert's belongings were not bad, so he couldn't let them go. Heavenly Netherworld Divine Sword, another divine tool, not bad. Tianyun took the Heavenly Netherworld Divine Sword. This was the second time he obtained a divine tool. Killing them wouldn't drop a divine tool, but with their cultivation, they weren't qualified to obtain a divine tool, so they must have borrowed it from the Holy Lord. Put down the Heavenly Netherworld Divine Sword. At this time, several Spirit King stage experts shouted angrily. This was a divine tool, how could they let Tianyun take it away? Oh, you want the Heavenly Netherworld Divine Sword, right? That's fine, you can wait for me down here, I'll deal with you later. If you can stop me, let alone the Netherworld Divine Sword, even my life will be yours. Tianyun said while looking at them playfully. Tianyun looked at them with a playful smile on his face. They remembered Tianyun's overbearing power. Now that he had the Heavenly Netherworld Divine Sword, how could they stop him? Wouldn't he be able to kill one of them with one strike? Chapter 544. Tianyun's words scared them, so when they saw the Heavenly Underworld Divine Sword being taken away, they couldn't help but shout. After shouting, they regretted it. Even if Tianyun took away the Heavenly Underworld Divine Sword, they wouldn't be able to stop him. Just imagine the terrifying power of the Heavenly Underworld Divine Sword. They couldn't resist it at all. You have successfully passed the trial and entered the final trial. A familiar voice came from the sky. Finally, Ming Chen and the others were driven out of the heavenly altar. Then the great array on the heavenly altar lit up, and in an instant, the entire great array lit up, and the next moment, Tianyun disappeared in the same place, and no one knew where he went. After seeing Tianyun disappear, everyone looked at each other in confusion. They didn't know where he was teleported to. Of course, they didn't know where Tianyun was teleported to, but they couldn't climb up to find him. As long as they got close to the top of the heavenly altar, they would be pressed to the ground. Even if they climbed up, they wouldn't be able to climb up. Therefore, there was only one way to reach the top of the heavenly altar, and that was to pass the trial and climb the divine ladder. Where did he go? Hurry up and inform the Holy Lord about the situation here. They didn't spread the news to the Heavenly Underworld Imperial Capital, mainly because they didn't want to incur the wrath of the Heavenly Underworld Imperial Capital. Once the Heavenly Underworld Imperial Capital figured out who the intruders were and captured them, they would be forgiven even if they failed in their duty. Now, 4 Spirit King stage powerhouses were killed in front of everyone, and there were a lot of rogue cultivators watching from the side, so they couldn't hide the news. Soon, the news of what happened here would spread. But where did Tianyun go? It's a complete mystery. Soon, the news spread quickly, and the Phoenix clan, who had been paying attention to the situation here, was shocked. He killed 4 Spirit King stage powerhouses in a row, including Ming Chen, and successfully passed the trial. The divine envoy is too powerful, isn't he? Is he that powerful? Elder Luo and the others had returned safely, and they even told Bai Shuihuang about what happened. Bai Shuihuang was surprised when she found out that the so-called treasure house is actually the demon beast cage, but as she heard about Tianyun's amazing performance, her beautiful eyes flashed, and she didn't know what she was thinking. However, many of the elders were still worried about Tianyun's situation. Tianyun was alone in the heavenly netherworld altar. They didn't expect that Tianyun would kill 4 Spirit King stage powerhouses in a row, which shocked the entire Phoenix clan. Apart from Tianyun, they couldn't think who else could have entered the heavenly underworld altar. The heavenly netherworld divine nation had many enemies, but that did not mean that they would dare to barge into the heavenly netherworld altar. Such a dangerous place was truly arduous and unrewarding. Therefore, they could only deduce that Tianyun was one of their divine envoys. It's possible. When we killed men who, everything was quiet, and when we reacted, men who was already nailed to the ground. This power and speed is the true strength of a divine emissary. Elder Lei smiled bitterly and said, "It seems that we were wrong. I thought that he was a good human, but who knew that he would be so powerful? This was a great thing for them. How could they not be happy to have such a powerful divine envoy? The patriarch's eyes are sharp enough. It's really scary when he first proposed to make him a divine envoy. Now, it seems that the patriarch doesn't dare to criticize the patriarch anymore. Shopkeeper Yi smiled. Now that he thought about it, the patriarch's eyes were sharp enough, otherwise, he would have missed out on such a powerful divine envoy. The elders smiled, but Bai Shuihuang frowned. No one knew what she was thinking. The heavenly underworld altar's trial, is he undergoing the divine king's inheritance trial? If he succeeds in obtaining the inheritance, his future will be quite terrifying. Bai Shuihuang was surprised, but she also thought about the inheritance trial. After hearing it, the elders nodded. They had heard about it, but the heavenly underworld altar was managed by the heavenly underworld divine kingdom, so they didn't know the real situation. When the divine envoy comes back, inform me immediately, Bai Shuihuang said and turned around to busy herself with other things. Not only the Phoenix clan was shocked by the news, but the entire ghost world was also shocked. An invader killed 4 Spirit King stage experts of the heavenly underworld divine kingdom. No one knew what kind of behemoth the heavenly underworld divine kingdom had provoked. In any case, this was something that everyone talked about after a meal, trying to guess the identity of the invader. The heavenly underworld divine kingdom was in an uproar, and they sent more powerful reinforcements to the heavenly underworld divine kingdom. The whole ghost world was in an uproar, but it was only the heavenly underworld divine kingdom. Most of them were gloating. Finally, someone went to deal with the heavenly underworld divine kingdom. Although they might not be able to completely suppress the heavenly underworld divine kingdom, they could at least reduce their morale. The outside world was in an uproar, and Yi Tianyun's whereabouts were even more mysterious. After Yi Tianyun was teleported away, he was teleported into a special space, surrounded by a wall of profound golden stone. He immediately deduced that he was still in the heavenly underworld altar and he wasn't teleported out. There was nothing strange in front of him, and there was only a passage that led straight to the front, but he didn't know where it led to. Yi Tianyun didn't think too much about it, and just lifted his foot to walk inside. As soon as he entered the passage, the surrounding environment immediately changed. Countless flowers and trees appeared, but they were all extremely precious treasures. There were even 5th and 6th grade spirit herbs, which was really shocking. Yi Tianyun was startled, and just when he wanted to lift his foot, he stopped. He stabilized the greed in his heart and continued to lift his foot, ignoring the situation around him. But after a few steps, he heard playful laughter from the edge of the forest in front of him. Yi Tianyun turned his head and saw that there was a pool at the side, and there were a few stunning beauties playing in the pool, wearing nothing to cover their bodies. It really made one's blood boil. "Brother Xiaojun, do you want to come and play?" At this time, they noticed Yi Tianyun walking over, and they hooked their fingers in his direction, gesturing for him to come and play with them. Yi Tianyun smiled, but he didn't walk over. Instead, he continued to walk forward resolutely, guarding his heart. A special aura kept invading his body, and no matter how he tried to block it, it would enter his body and affect his Tao heart. Chapter 545. When Yi Tianyun entered this passage, he knew that these are all illusions, they are all illusions. This was a trial, so he had to guard his Tao heart. Sometimes, even though he knew it was an illusion, everything seemed so real, and there was a constant flow of special spiritual power that could affect his condition. This was the effect of the illusion, it could affect all of their actions. Yi Tianyun was also affected by the illusion, and there was a constant flow of spiritual power that wanted to confuse him, but as soon as it entered his body, it was absorbed by him and turned into experience. However, there was still a little bit of spiritual power that flowed into his mind and began to affect him a little bit. Overall, there was no problem, and he could still continue to move forward. As he continued to go deeper, there were other illusions that affected him along the way, and they were full of endless temptations. It was either spirit herbs, beautiful women, divine tools, or a bunch of heaven-level martial arts. He didn't care about these temptations, and he kept moving forward, ignoring them. Finally, after walking for a long distance and taking the last step, the surrounding environment disappeared in an instant. It was replaced by walls made of profound gold stone, which looked very rigid. When he turned his head back, he realized that he had actually walked through this passageway that was not too far away. It was the same passageway that he had seen before. It was at most 200 feet away, but he had walked for several hours. It was truly a long time. Tianyun knew that this was an illusion, but he didn't try to break it, and he couldn't. This illusion was quite exquisite, and it would take a lot of time to break it, so it was better to walk all the way out. Unless he was trapped inside, he wouldn't choose to break it by force. Breaking it by force wouldn't bring him any benefits, so it was better to walk slowly and enjoy the scenery around him. "I'm out." After Tianyun walked out, he looked up and saw a wide field in front of him. In the middle of the field, there was a floating energy ball, but he didn't know what it was. Other than that, there was nothing around, not even an exit, it was just a wide field. When he walked closer, a light flew out of the energy ball and turned into a person floating in the air. When he took a closer look, he saw a little girl in front of him. Phantom, peak of Spirit King stage, can condense a formation and can never die. The martial arts he learned. Tianyun was too lazy to read the rest of the content. In any case, these illusionary spirits would never die. It was not like he wanted to destroy the array here. Moreover, he had no way to destroy it. As far as the eye could see, it was a creator-level formation. With his current level, there was no way he could destroy it. Even the heavenly eye was useless. Moreover, the Phantom's cultivation base was at the peak of Spirit King stage, so whenever he felt something was wrong, it would immediately attack him. In his current situation, he still couldn't deal with such a powerful opponent. Moreover, this Phantom was not an enemy to begin with. Why would he go against her for no reason? Congratulations, Inheritor. You have successfully passed the trial. You have met the requirements to become an Inheritor. The little girl's tone was very rigid and emotionless. They were not living beings in the first place and were just spirits that had been created. They did not have their own feelings. Generally, creators created things according to their own preferences, but this creator actually liked to create a little girl. It was really hard to fathom. However, to be able to casually create a peak Spirit King stage Phantom, it meant that the creator was very strong. Otherwise, how could he create such an amazing Phantom? Have I met the requirements to become an Inheritor? Then what will I inherit? Tianyun smiled lightly. Although you have met the requirements, your cultivation is still a bit too low. You need to be at least at the Spirit King stage to receive the complete inheritance. Only then will you be able to control all the arrays in the Heaven Ascending Divine Altar. The Phantom explained. I need to be at least at the Spirit King stage. Tianyun nodded. He still had a long way to go. If he stayed here and cultivated, he didn't know how long it would take for him to break through to the Spirit King stage. The real name of this place is Heaven Ascending Divine Altar? What is this place used for? Tianyun temporarily ignored the Phantom and turned to the real place. Yes, this is the Heaven Ascending Divine Altar. It was originally built by the owner as a teleportation array that connects the Heaven Realm and the Ghost Realm. So far, because there is no owner, no one has been able to activate it. The voice of the Phantom was very clear, but it did not have the slightest emotion. There was not the slightest bit of cuteness in it. This place can teleport to the Heaven Realm? Tianyun was shocked. He didn't expect that the real purpose of this place was a teleportation array that could directly connect to the Heaven Realm. In the mortal realm, no one knew the entrance to the Heaven Realm, so it was easy to go to the Heaven Realm through this place. Yes, I will explain it in detail, you can check it carefully. After saying that, the Phantom stretched out her hand, and a light beam shot towards Tianyun. He didn't stop it and let it go into his brain. Soon, the details of the situation appeared in front of him, including the information about the owner of this place. The owner of the Heaven Ascending Divine Altar was called the Heaven Creating Divine King. His cultivation was at the Divine King stage, and he was also a creator-level Divine Rune Master. It was very difficult to become a Divine Rune Master. Not only was he a creator-level Divine Rune Master, but he was also a creator-level Divine Rune Master. The Heaven Creating Divine King was a powerhouse in the Netherworld, and he had his own force, the Flying Divine Kingdom. In fact, Tianyun had never heard of this Divine Kingdom. When he was at the Phoenix clan, he spent some time to understand the overall situation, but he had never heard of the Flying Divine Kingdom. It was not that the name was wrong, but that the Flying Divine Kingdom had already declined, and no one knew where it was hiding. According to the information passed, the heaven-creating Divine King had already left the netherworld, and no one knew where he went. It had been thousands of years, or even tens of thousands of years. As a result, the inheritance here had never been obtained by his own force, but he inherited it. The purpose of the heaven-creating Divine King was very simple. In addition to being a place for his own force to cultivate, it was more to connect to the heaven realm. In this way, he could travel back and forth between the two places, and he could also gain experience, instead of staying in the netherworld all the time. Originally, this place was set to only allow the disciples of the Flying Divine Kingdom to enter and inherit the inheritance. Because it had been too long, the Phantom automatically decided to change to another method. Those who could successfully pass the trial would be able to obtain the inheritance. Lee Tianyun was very lucky. He just happened to be in the period of change, and he also met the conditions for the inheritance. The conditions for the inheritance were very simple. He had to comprehend the divine art of the universe on the divine ladder, and then successfully climb the towering heaven ladder to reach the highest level. According to the original conditions, only those who had comprehended the first two levels of the divine art of the universe would be qualified to inherit the inheritance. This meant that the divine ladder had to be slowly climbed up step by step, and slowly comprehend the martial arts. Otherwise, if it was incomplete, it would just be a simple trip. Chapter 546. The condition to obtain the inheritance was that simple. One only needed to complete 2 trials to be qualified to become an inheritor. However, although it looked simple, the journey was extremely arduous. Many cultivators got stuck while climbing the divine stairs, or when climbing the heaven-ascending stairs, they were unable to reach the top. In reality, very few of them were able to reach the top. Usually, only a few out of 30 people could reach the top. It was enough to show how difficult it was. Under normal circumstances, after successfully reaching the top, if all the people who reached the top met the requirements, they would undergo a confrontation trial to choose the most outstanding inheritor. Who knew that out of so many people, only Lee Tianyun succeeded in comprehending the first 2 levels of the divine technique of the universe. In the end, the other challengers were judged to have failed. Not to mention the failure, he actually had to expel all the failed challengers. This trial was even crueler than the normal trial. The main reason why this happened was that he was not a disciple of the Flying Divine Kingdom. That was why such an unusual situation occurred. Of course, Lee Tianyun did not dislike this. To him, fighting one-on-one was the best way to obtain a large amount of experience. The rest was to go through the normal trial passage. Once he passed it, he would be able to reach this place and successfully pass the trial. The overall difficulty was acceptable. However, it gave Lee Tianyun quite a lot of experience. He was quite satisfied. Even if he did not obtain the inheritance, he was still quite satisfied. At least he had leveled up 2 levels here. What could be more satisfying than this? I understand the general situation. Lee Tianyun nodded. After going through the general information, he finally understood why such a situation had occurred. Soon after, he raised his head to look at the Phantom and said, "Can I accept the inheritance now?" "No problem. However, you have to promise one thing and make an oath. Otherwise, you will not be able to receive the inheritance." The Phantom said in a deep voice. "What is it?" Lee Tianyun frowned. Even at the last step, he was still reluctant to let him pass. "If you meet a bloodline disciple of the Flying Divine Kingdom, you must pass on everything you have learned to him and protect him," the Phantom said. At the end of the day, even if the outsiders pass the trial and complete the inheritance, it is equivalent to a disguised reward for helping to find people. Lee Tianyun shook his head. This heaven-creating Divine King really did not leave any leeway for his family's bloodline. However, if this reward was announced, it could be said that everyone would fight to the death to obtain it. This inheritance wasn't simple. Other than the cosmos divine art, it also contained all the insights of the Creator divine inscriptionists. This meant that if a divine inscriptionist with a decent standard obtained this inheritance, it was very likely that he would become the next creator divine inscriptionist. Just these martial arts and the insights of the creator of the divine inscriptionists were enough to cause many powers to fight over them and even launch an all-out attack on them. If the divine lord of the nether heaven divine nation knew of the situation here, he would definitely go all out and snatch all the inheritances. Cultivating the universe divine art could allow one to break through to the divine king realm. How could they not be moved? Moreover, this was an exclusive martial art of the divine king realm. It was definitely a top-notch heaven-level martial art. Not only that, but it could also control the heaven ascension divine altar, and when one reached the spirit king stage, he could also travel between the heaven realm and the netherworld at will. Obtaining so many treasures and helping to take care of the descendants of the heaven-flying divine nation was not a problem, it should be said to be a small problem. Imparting all these to him did not mean that he would have to abandon what he had learned. No one would be willing to do so. Moreover, he had to find it first. If he couldn't find it, why would he need to impart it to him? Do you agree? Phantom stared at him and said, "What if I don't agree?" Tianyun asked. "If you don't agree, I will erase your memory before letting you leave." Phantom said expressionlessly. Tianyun had obtained 2 layers of the cosmos divine art, although it was not a lot, at least he knew how to cultivate it, so how could he let him leave? Tianyun narrowed his eyes and looked at it and said, "It seems that I can only agree, but if I want to leave, no one can stop me. Considering that you have given me so many inheritances, it would be a waste if I don't accept them." If he didn't agree, he would not be able to obtain the inheritances, so he could only choose to agree. This was not a big problem. He was not asked to find someone. It was just that if they met on the way, they would find him and give him the inheritances. If he really wanted to escape, he could just teleport away. No matter how strong the phantom was, it would not be able to fly out of the heaven ascension divine altar. Then make a vow. Phantom signaled him to make a vow. What do you mean by protecting him? If he provokes any forces, wouldn't I be a fool? Tianyun shrugged. He was not a nanny. If the other party happened to be a playboy or a troublemaker, what would he do? If his cultivation is above the Spirit King stage, you don't need to protect him. If he is below the Spirit King stage, you have to protect him no matter what he does. If he has done all kinds of bad things, then please kill him on behalf of the Master. Phantom finally said something fair. If the descendant is a homicidal maniac, how can I protect him? He would rather give up this inheritance than protect a homicidal maniac who kills innocent people every day, and I still have to help him? What a joke. That's fair, it won't make things difficult for me. Tianyun, if I find the descendant of the flying divine kingdom, I will teach him all the inheritance of the heaven-creating divine king and protect him until he reaches the spirit king stage. If he does all kinds of evil things, I will help the heaven-creating divine king to kill him. After making the vow, a streak of light appeared in the sky and drilled into his soul, firmly branding it. As long as he didn't complete the vow, he couldn't break it. Successfully accepted the quest. Find the descendant of the heaven-creating divine king's descendant. Reward, 200 million EXP, 500. 000 crazy points, 100 heaven-creating divine king's descendants favorability. Is this okay? Tianyun looked up and asked. Yes. Phantom nodded and controlled the light on the side to quickly cover Tianyun, and a stream of memories flowed into his mind. Tianyun began to accept these memories. One by one, he used the appraisal eye to record all the information he got. There were a lot of memories, most of which were amazing heaven-level martial arts, including the divine art of universe. The divine art of universe was the most important, and the rest of the heaven-level martial arts could only be regarded as a foil. The most powerful one was the divine art of universe. The heaven-creating divine king relied on it to become one of the strongest divine kings. In addition to that, there was a pile of experience. Some are cultivation experience, and some are divine rune master experience. All of this was meaningless to him. He did not need these so-called insights. He just needed to practice more and gain proficiency. He did not need any insights at all. Chapter 547. Time passed quickly, and in a blink of an eye, almost a week had passed. The Heaven Ascending Divine Altar was the Heavenly Netherworld Altar. Its real name was Heaven Ascending Divine Altar, but it was taken over by the Heavenly Netherworld Divine Nation, so it was renamed to Heavenly Netherworld Altar. Many people thought that such a magnificent building was built by the Heavenly Netherworld Divine Nation. Now, there were many cultivators from the Heaven Netherworld Divine Kingdom surrounding the Heaven Ascension Divine Altar. They even searched inside and out, almost flipping the Heaven Ascension Divine Altar. Spirit King Stage cultivators seemed to have been dispatched to block this place, and the strongest among them had reached the pinnacle level. As for the Saint King Stage cultivators, they were also dispatched to guard the Heaven Ascending Divine Altar. He was not the Holy Lord, but the Imperial Preceptor of the Heavenly Netherworld Divine Nation, the strongest existence under the Holy Lord. He was also a very strong Divine Rune Master. Although he was not at the Creator level, he was at least at the Divine Rune Grandmaster level, and he was a life-rank Divine Rune Grandmaster. Becoming a Creator-level Divine Rune Master was too difficult. Even if he had reached the Holy Lord level, he still had a long way to go. Originally, the Imperial Preceptor would not come here, but who knew that there was a secret passage here, so he had no choice but to come here in person. He began to investigate in detail, spreading his spiritual sense in all directions. As long as there was the slightest sign of trouble, he would immediately rush over. There is a secret passage here that we don't know? A handsome middle-aged man's gaze was like an arrow as he coldly stared at the wall made of mystic gold stone, wanting to see something from this divine imprint. Along the way, he kept reaching out and patting the wall, trying to see if there were any changes. However, he had been here for a few days, and he had almost searched the inside and outside, but he still couldn't find a single entrance. Were the 6 of you guarding it at that time? He turned his head and looked at the 6 people kneeling on the ground behind him. They were the 6 guards who were guarding the door at that time. They were all trembling, and they didn't dare to look up at the man in front of them. Imperial Preceptor, it was indeed the 6 of us guarding the door at that time. One of the Imperial Preceptors said with a trembling voice. The middle-aged man in front of them was the Imperial Preceptor of the Heavenly Netherworld Divine Nation. He was handsome, wearing a long robe, with his hands behind his back, and 2 sword-like eyebrows slightly raised, looking at them indifferently. You couldn't see anything at that time? Imperial Preceptor asked indifferently. We can't see anything. We can't sense anyone passing by. With our strength, even if a Spirit King Stage cultivator is hiding in the dark, we can still detect him. They hurriedly explained. They did not want to show the slightest dereliction of duty, otherwise they would be dead meat. Scram. With a wave of the State Preceptor's hand, the 6 guards were immediately sent flying. They tumbled a few times before crashing into the wall. They immediately spat out blood and suffered light injuries. This was not a serious injury, just a minor one. It was equivalent to giving them a little punishment. Imperial Preceptor, we didn't lie about anything. We really had been guarding here all this time. We definitely didn't do anything else, and we didn't feel anything. They were panicking. If the Imperial Preceptor wanted to kill them, they couldn't stop him at all. Yes, it's very likely that he slipped in through some secret passage. Our soul sense isn't weak, and we've always been investigating the surrounding situation. There's absolutely no way that we've missed anything. They all pleaded for mercy. They didn't want to die. They clearly couldn't see anything. If they died just like that, it would be too unjust. I'm just punishing you guys a little. Although there's a possibility that they might have sneaked in through the secret passageway or through you guys. No matter what, as guards, you guys have already failed your duty by letting the enemy slip into your line of sight. The Imperial Tutor looked at them coldly. The Imperial Preceptor was very clear about the standards of the 6 guards, but it must be known that the surroundings of the Heaven Ascension Divine Altar were completely bare, without any cover, yet they were still able to approach and enter the secret passage. How could they not be punished? However, if the other party was a Spirit King Stage cultivator who was proficient in concealment technique, it would be very difficult to detect them. This is our mistake. Please punish us. They quickly crawled up and knelt in front of the Imperial Preceptor again. Thinking of this, their faces turned pale. After thinking about it carefully, it was indeed the case. Even if the other party came in through the secret passage, they still failed to investigate the surrounding situation, which was also a dereliction of duty. But they couldn't be blamed for this. The other party was too strong. You have been punished just now. If I really wanted to punish you, do you think you can still live? The Imperial Preceptor said coldly. Well, you can get out of here now. Thank you, Imperial Preceptor. They hurriedly stood up, bowed deeply, and quickly left. They didn't dare to stay here any longer. If the Imperial Preceptor changed his mind, they would be dead. Of course, the Imperial Preceptor wouldn't go back on his words. If the Imperial Preceptor's concealment technique was strong, he wouldn't be able to see them. The person was already dead, so killing these guards wouldn't help, and it wasn't a dereliction of duty. The secret passage? I've searched outside, but I didn't see anything. Where is it? The Imperial Preceptor had already searched outside, but he still couldn't find anything. He could only say that the other party knew about the secret passage, but he didn't know that Tianyun came in through teleportation, which was something that the Imperial Preceptor couldn't figure out. At most, he could only imagine that the other party sneaked in through the secret passage, but he couldn't think of anything else. Inheritance, this is the Divine King's inheritance. If that kid got it, we can't let him go. The reason why the Imperial Preceptor came here was not for revenge. The 5 Spirit King stage experts were dead, but the Divine King's inheritance was the most precious. But after so many years of research, they still couldn't successfully obtain the inheritance. Over time, the Divine King's inheritance was abandoned, and it became a trial place for disciples. Now that the Divine King's inheritance was obtained, how could the Imperial Preceptor not care about it? When he was at his wits' end, the entire heaven ascending divine altar shook, and all the divine runes flickered incessantly. The group of people was shocked, and they didn't know what was going on. Suddenly, the surrounding divine runes released a ray of light, and the cultivators who were hit by the light screamed in pain as if they were burned. They turned and ran, quickly fleeing to the outermost area. The Imperial Preceptor quickly waved his hand to block the light. The light didn't have much effect on him, but it had a huge effect on the Void Spirit stage cultivators. If they continued to stay here, they would definitely die. What's going on? Who activated this array? Did that kid get the inheritance? The Imperial Preceptor was shocked, and his heart sank. Of course, the one who caused this was Tianyun. He let the Phantom control the array to drive out the experts of the heavenly netherworld divine kingdom. This is my territory. You want to dip your fingers in it? Tianyun sneered. Although his cultivation wasn't up to the standard, he could still make the Phantom drive out this group of people. He wanted to get rid of all the experts of the heavenly netherworld divine kingdom. From today onwards, no one would be able to break in, not even the Holy Lord. Unless the Holy Lord attacked crazily, but at most, they would only be able to scratch the surface. Chapter 548. The entire heaven ascending divine altar started to attack crazily. All the cultivators had become invaders and were attacked crazily. Many cultivators did not manage to escape to the outermost area and died inside. Those with stronger cultivation quickly escaped from the heaven ascension divine altar, but they were also battered and exhausted, more or less suffering from injuries that were not light. The divine inscriptions on the heaven ascending divine altar were extremely powerful. Every inch of the altar was filled with offensive divine inscriptions. Once an attack was launched, it would be useless no matter where one hid. State Preceptor also quickly retreated from the heaven ascension divine altar. The effects of the attacks here were limited to him, but if he continued to be attacked for too long, he would not be able to withstand it. After the Imperial Teacher came out of the heaven ascending divine altar, he saw the entire heaven ascending divine altar blossoming with dazzling light. At the same time, it was constantly absorbing the surrounding spiritual power to replenish the consumption of the heaven ascending divine altar. Under such circumstances, the heaven ascending divine altar could maintain its attacks without exhausting too much energy. It must be that kid's doing. Imperial Preceptor's eyes were cold. He didn't expect such an ending. In an instant, most of his subordinates were injured, and some even died inside. Imperial Tutor, many of our subordinates have died inside. State Preceptor, what should we do now? One by one, they came to report. Their faces were filled with panic, and their bodies were also covered with wounds. It was obvious that they had just escaped. Their cultivation was not weak, basically at the void spirit stage, but they were still injured by the great array inside. If they continued to stay inside, they would die without a doubt. The Imperial Preceptor's face was gloomy. He was a dignified Saint King stage master, but he was forced to flee. He had originally come to investigate this matter, but who knew that he would encounter such a situation? It was tantamount to a dereliction of duty. All of you, evacuate from here and stand guard outside. If there's any sign of trouble, intercept it for me. If anyone comes near, kill without mercy. The Imperial Preceptor gritted his teeth and said, "Yes." They looked at each other in dismay. This was the only thing they could do now. They just didn't know how the Imperial Preceptor was going to break this Heaven Ascension Divine Altar. If even they couldn't enter, their heavenly netherworld divine nation would become a joke. Didn't they say that this heavenly netherworld altar belonged to them? But now, it had fallen into someone else's hands, and they had even chased everyone out. This was a great humiliation, a stain on the Nether Heaven Divine Kingdom's reputation. After the State Preceptor gave the order, he looked coldly at the Heaven Ascension Divine Altar. In the next moment, he flew over and slammed his palm down on the Heaven Ascension Divine Altar. In an instant, his Saint King stage cultivation erupted, shaking the heavens and the earth. Many trees around him were uprooted and turned into powder that flowed into his body. The spiritual energy and essence of the earth were all extracted by this palm. In an instant, the spiritual energy within a radius of 10 miles was completely extracted by the Imperial Preceptor. The palm that was pressing down emitted an emerald green light. Following that, a huge palm appeared in the sky. It was exactly the same as the Imperial Preceptor's palm. The only difference was that it was covered in green light, as though it was filled with life force. In an instant, everything within a 10-kilometer radius darkened under this giant palm. Everything was enveloped by this giant palm. The terrifying pressure caused the cultivators in the distance to run away in fear. Some of them couldn't escape in time and directly knelt on the ground, unable to move at all. Just the pressure alone was enough to make millions of people tremble and lie on the ground, unable to move. As for the soldiers of the Nether Heaven Divine Nation, they all knelt down and looked at the Imperial Advisor with the highest respect. The Imperial Advisor is invincible. The Imperial Advisor is invincible. They roared. Their emotions were stirred up by the power of the Imperial Preceptor. They wanted to see the Imperial Preceptor lift the heaven ascending divine altar. "Open for me." The Imperial Preceptor roared, and finally, a heavy palm fell on the entrance. He wanted to break the door and break the divine inscriptions along the way, so that he could enter. Previously, he had been crazily attacked inside, so it was not easy for him to do anything. Now that he was outside, it was the best time for him to attack. Boom! The gigantic palm came crashing down, causing the Heaven Ascension Divine Altar to tremble, but it was only a slight tremble, there were no other problems. At most, a few small pieces fell from the corner. It could be said that it was just a superficial injury. However, the Imperial Preceptor did not stop attacking. He knew that this place was not so easy to destroy, so he could only attack madly. For a time, the earth quaked and the mountains swayed. At the base of the Heaven Ascension Divine Altar, numerous cracks started to appear, and the cracks spread out in all directions, forming numerous trenches. Fortunately, the Imperial Preceptor had already ordered them to stay away from here, otherwise, they would really be affected by this attack. While the Imperial Preceptor was crazily attacking and breaking the divine inscriptions, Eonyun squinted and looked at the situation outside. The Imperial Preceptor is really impatient. He is about to start attacking. Can the Heaven Ascending Divine Altar withstand it? Eonyun turned his head and looked at the phantom next to him. This place had existed for many years, and he didn't know how long it could withstand such a terrible attack. The Saint King stage cultivation is very strong, but the Heaven Ascending Divine Altar is not a decoration. The Phantom was angry. Since you want to destroy the Heaven Ascending Divine Altar, then kill all the intruders. Immediately, the Phantom madly controlled the entire Heaven Ascending Divine Altar, and then the divine inscriptions on the top crazily gathered energy, and soon the divine inscriptions were completely lit up. When the Imperial Preceptor saw this situation, he immediately felt that something was wrong. Is this a counterattack? The Imperial Preceptor's face sank, but his attack did not weaken. After a while, the divine inscriptions finally condensed, and then a beam of light shot out from the center of the divine inscriptions, like a beam of light from the sun, so dazzling that people couldn't open their eyes. Boom! The terrible energy beam directly penetrated the huge palm and blasted in the direction of the Imperial Preceptor. The Imperial Preceptor's face suddenly changed, and he quickly summoned a long spear to stab the beam of light. Boom! After the two collided, a violent light burst in the air, bursting out in all directions. At this time, they couldn't see clearly what was going on, but after a while, they saw the Imperial Preceptor retreating dozens of miles, and there was a huge ravine in front of him, as if it was plowed by something, and there were bursts of white smoke. The Imperial Preceptor's body also emitted white smoke, and his clothes were burnt, and he almost evaporated. This power was too terrible. However, the Imperial Preceptor's strength was also not so bad, and he forcibly withstood the attack, but he looked a little embarrassed. Good, such a strong attack. Everyone gasped. Their Imperial Preceptor was already very powerful, but they didn't expect the Heaven Ascending Divine Altar to be even more powerful. The power of this attack is not bad. It is much stronger than the divine inscriptions I controlled before. Yi Tianyun was shocked by the power of this attack. Chapter 549. Of course, your cultivation hasn't reached the Spirit King stage, so you can't really become the master of this place. That's why the amount of power he could unleash was very limited. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to escape more than one level. The Phantom looked at him and said, "This is the defensive array that the master set before. If anyone tries to attack this place, they can fight back regardless of whether there is an inheritor controlling this place or not. Saint King stage masters can still be killed, but this Imperial Preceptor's cultivation is obviously not weak, but it's still enough to make him suffer." Yi Tianyun nodded. His cultivation was very strong, and it was comparable to a Spirit King stage cultivator at the 6th or 7th layer. However, this place only allowed cultivators at the Spirit King stage. Even if he could kill a Saint King, he would still be at the Void Spirit stage. This was too rigid, but the rules were like this, and he really couldn't change them. Well, how many times can this attack last? Yi Tianyun felt that this thing was really strong, but he didn't know how many times it could attack. Judging from the spiritual power gathered so far, it can attack 3 times. The Phantom answered truthfully. Now that Yi Tianyun had become an inheritor, he already knew everything about this place. If he reached the standard, Yi Tianyun would officially become the master of this place. 3 more attacks? What happens after 3 attacks? Yi Tianyun asked. At that time, how long will it take to attack again? According to the feedback from the Spirit Gathering Array, it will take about 2 days before it can attack again. If you can provide pure Spirit Jade Stones, you can attack immediately. The Phantom said, "If I can provide Spirit Jade Stones, I can attack continuously? Isn't that equivalent to a powerful cannon?" Yi Tianyun's eyes lit up. This was a cannon that could deal with a Saint King stage cultivator. If it was a cultivator below the Saint King stage, he would definitely be able to destroy a city. It was a pity that he couldn't get experience from this cannon. Yi Tianyun guessed that he would only be able to get experience after he reached the standard and became the master of this place. Yes, as long as you have enough spiritual power, you can attack continuously. The Phantom said, "Tsk, this is really powerful. How many Spirit Jade Stones does it cost?" Yi Tianyun nodded and asked. "Roughly 10 million Spirit Jade Stones per shot." The Phantom explained. "How much did you say?" Yi Tianyun wondered if he heard it wrong. 10 million Spirit Jade Stones for 1 attack, the Phantom repeated tirelessly. 10 million spirit jade stones per shot, this cost. Although he had a lot of spirit jade stones per shot, it was equivalent to the cost of a low-grade sacred tool. He had a lot of sacred tools, but he could only use them for a dozen shots. Of course, he had a lot of sacred tools, but he could still sell them. It was just that one shot was basically equivalent to a low-grade saint artifact. The cost was truly terrifying. At first, he thought that if he spent less, he could throw everything at the Imperial Preceptor. Who knew that the price would be so high? Forget it for the time being. Oh right, I wonder if we can fly in this heaven-ascending altar? Tianyun was more concerned about this. If it could fly, it would be equivalent to a flying turret. He could fly directly to the heavenly underworld imperial capital and blast it a few times. Tianyun was more concerned about this. If it could fly, it would be like a flying turret. He could directly fly to the heavenly underworld imperial capital and fire a few shots. No, the heaven-ascending divine altar is fixed and cannot be moved. Once it is moved, it will not be able to connect to the heaven realm, and the teleportation formation above will fail. The phantom broke his fantasy. Okay, Tianyun was a little disappointed, but after thinking about it carefully, it was indeed the case. The heaven-ascending divine altar was built here for a reason. The coordinates here corresponded to the coordinates of the heaven realm, so it could not be moved at will. Otherwise, the heaven-ascending divine altar would be surrounded by the forces of the flying divine kingdom. Bastard! The Imperial Preceptor outside roared and rushed over once again. However, he was met with a fierce blast that sent him flying again. Many cultivators from the heavenly netherworld divine kingdom were also affected. They were instantly turned into ashes, not even a speck of dust was left. After blocking twice, the Imperial Master began to suffer some minor injuries, but he could not damage the heaven-ascending divine altar in the slightest. I miscalculated. The Imperial Master's face was gloomy. According to this, he could not attack the heaven-ascending divine altar at all. This attack did not affect him much, but it interfered with him greatly, making him unable to break the heaven-ascending divine altar's divine inscription. If that was the case, how could he kill his way in? The Imperial Master could only wait for a while and think of other ways. Inside the heaven-ascending divine altar, Bean shook his head and said, "There should be no problem here, right? Can it withstand the attacks of the Holy King?" No problem, Master's defense is not so easy to break, and there is also the support of Master's power. If we really attack, it will also activate the divine sense left by Master. Even if it is at the Holy King level, it can still be killed. The Phantom said in a deep voice. It seems that I am not here, so I can rest assured. Tianyun nodded. He could not stay here forever. There was nothing good in the heaven-ascending divine altar, only a pile of martial arts, and nothing else. There were no weapons or pills here, only some inheritance. Although the concentration of spiritual energy was not bad, it would take a long time to absorb it to upgrade, and he did not rely on this method to upgrade. Unless the concentration was 10 times stronger, it would take a long time to upgrade. You want to go out? There are many enemies outside, you cannot easily escape. The voice of the Phantom was emotionless, but it knew the situation around it. It did not want the inheritor to die. Don't worry, you will know this later, no one can stop me, including you. Tianyun said with a faint smile. Speaking of finding the descendants of the heaven-creating divine king, I wonder if there is any way to do so? There is. The Phantom stretched out its hand, and a jade pendant fell from the air into Tianyun's hand. It explained. This is the bloodline jade pendant. Once it meets the descendants of Master, it will definitely light up. So that's how it is, then it will be much easier. Tianyun's eyes lit up. He was just about to say how to find these descendants. It turned out that there was such a jade pendant, then everything would not be so difficult. After taking the jade pendant, Tianyun looked at the Phantom and said, "Then I will leave this place to you, I will go out for a while. The next time I come back, I will be able to fully control this place." If his cultivation was not enough, he could not become the true master of this place, he could not use the power of this place, so it was useless to stay here. Then how will you leave this place? The Phantom looked up and down at him. I advise you not to leave here for the time being. Stay here and cultivate. The next moment, Yi Tianyun's figure flashed and disappeared in front of the phantom. The phantom was stunned. It carefully explored the entire heaven ascending divine altar, including a large area outside, but it could not detect Yi Tianyun's aura. Chapter 550. In a place 50 miles away from the heaven ascending divine altar, a figure suddenly appeared. This person is Yi Tianyun. He teleported to a place 50 miles away from the heaven ascending divine altar. The original teleportation can only teleport 10 miles away, but after he upgraded it with 2 million crazy points, he can teleport directly to a range of 50 miles. Even the cooldown time has been shortened a lot. It only takes half an hour for him to teleport again. If he continues like this, it will only take a few minutes for him to teleport again. At that time, who can catch up with him? He is definitely the king of escape. Originally, he was not in a hurry to upgrade it. It's just that most of the guards are within a radius of more than 20 miles. If he teleports within 10 miles, he will definitely be exposed. At that time, he will be besieged by everyone, including the Imperial Preceptor. The best way is to spend 2 million crazy points to upgrade his teleportation, which is undoubtedly the best way. Teleportation is really useful. I wonder what expression the phantom will have? Yi Tianyun smiled as he saw a group of people surrounding the heaven ascending divine altar from the back, making it impenetrable. As long as someone comes out from inside, they can't escape from their eyes. In addition, the Imperial Preceptor has been watching. It's impossible to escape from their eyes. Yi Tianyun didn't plan to come out from the inside at all. He teleported to the outermost area and changed his face, then he escaped easily. Goodbye, you guys have fun. Yi Tianyun didn't go to hunt these guards. If the Imperial Preceptor noticed him, it will be difficult for him to escape. Although teleportation of 50 miles is scary, a Holy King's spiritual sense can easily explore the situation 100 miles away. Unless he teleports to a very hidden place, otherwise, it will be really troublesome to escape. Although the Imperial Preceptor can detect this side, he is focusing on the heaven ascending divine altar. How can he see the situation behind? Immediately, Yi Tianyun turned around and left. He didn't want to stay here any longer. The next time he comes back, he will be at the Spirit King stage. If his cultivation is lower than that, there is no need to come back here. As for what happened to the Imperial Preceptor and the rest, Yi Tianyun couldn't be bothered. He believed that they would definitely cause some damage, but as time passed, he could only choose to give up. At that time, he would send someone to keep an eye on this place. If the Imperial Tutor knew that no one was inside, how would he feel? After Yi Tianyun left, he immediately rushed back to the Phoenix Nest. He had already stayed at the Heaven Ascending Divine Altar for a long time, so it was time to go back, lest they worry. Very quickly, he flew back to the Phoenix Nest. When he flew into the fire parasol tree forest, someone immediately intercepted him and looked at him vigilantly. "Who are you?" After seeing it clearly, a guard immediately exclaimed, "Lord Oracle." Yi Tianyun had already changed back to that face, so he was immediately recognized. However, they still looked at him seriously and said, "Please show your token." The identity token was very important. Not only Yi Tianyun, even the other elders had to show their identity token when they came back. Disguising himself wasn't a problem, but the token was difficult to forge. Of course, the appearance was equally important. Both must be carefully examined to fully confirm the identity. Yi Tianyun took out the oracle token and handed it to the front. The expressions of several people suddenly changed and quickly moved to the side to make way for him. "Welcome back, Lord Oracle." Their tone was full of respect. They did not choose to reject and hate Yi Tianyun just because he was a foreigner. Yi Tianyun had done so many things here and had already been recognized by the Phoenix clan. Of course, no one would reject him. Yi Tianyun nodded and lifted his foot to walk inside. When he returned to the elegant residence, he saw Elder Luo playing with his granddaughter. A smile appeared on his face. "Daddy!" When Yen-er saw Yi Tianyun coming back, her eyes suddenly lit up and immediately rushed to his side. The ice phoenix on the side also rushed over and kept pecking Yi Tianyun's body. It kept screaming as if it was blaming Yi Tianyun for not taking it with him. Okay, I'll take you out next time. Yi Tianyun patted the ice phoenix's head. How could he bring the ice phoenix to the heaven-ascending divine altar? That is, I thought you didn't want Yen-er anymore. Yen-er looked at him with tears in her eyes, still clinging to him. How is that possible? Don't you have Elder Luo to play with? Yi Tianyun rubbed her little head. Oracle, you're back. Elder Luo came over excitedly. Yi Tianyun did not come back for so long, and hearing that the imperial teacher came in person, they all felt a little worried. Now that he was back, Elder Luo was naturally happy. Well, I came back safe and sound. I said there would be no problem. Yi Tianyun smiled and said, not only that, I also killed 5 experts of the Nether Heaven Divine Kingdom and obtained the inheritance. It feels good. The Patriarch said that you should go and find her as soon as you come back. Elder Luo said with a smile. Let's go now. Yi Tianyun said with a smile as he walked towards the Elder Hall with Yen-er in his arms. When they arrived at the Elder Hall, they happened to see Bai Shui Huang talking to someone. When they came in, Bai Shui Huang looked up and saw Yi Tianyun, and her eyes suddenly lit up. I knew that you would come back safe and sound. You're a great hero this time. I don't dare. Without Elder Luo's help, I wouldn't have been able to do this. Yi Tianyun said very modestly. You don't have to be modest. I know a little bit about what you did, especially about you killing 5 Spirit King stage experts. This kind of courage is rare even in the Phoenix clan. Bai Shui Huang smiled and said, although it's not a treasure house, it's still a great achievement to successfully defeat the heavenly Nether Heaven Divine Kingdom's forces. You are a great hero this time. I don't know what kind of reward you want, but I will try my best to satisfy you. Successfully completed, capture the heavenly Nether Heaven altar, seize the treasure, quest. Reward, 300 million EXP, 1 million crazy points, 50,000 SBS, 100 Phoenix clan favorability. At this time, the quest was finally completed, and the reward was amazing. As for the reward, I only need the soul accumulating grass. Yi Tianyun said with a smile. Soul accumulating grass. This is difficult. We don't have any soul accumulating grass in stock at the moment. I would rather choose any high-grade sacred tool. Bai Shui Huang said helplessly. Soul accumulating grass was much cheaper than high-grade sacred tool, but they didn't have any. In that case, I don't need it for the time being. Yi Tianyun shook his head. He had no interest in other things. You don't even want high-grade sacred tool? Bai Shui Huang frowned. I'm not interested. Tianyun shook his head and said, I don't need it. Why would I need it? What about the Imperial Phoenix Blood Essence? Bai Shui Huang squinted her eyes and looked at Yi Tianyun carefully. Yi Tianyun looked at Bai Shui Huang. It was indeed very precious. He felt that it wasn't as simple as giving her a reward. She wanted to make her a part of the Phoenix clan. However, he didn't have any objections. Anyway, he had a good relationship with the Phoenix race. So, he didn't mind if they wanted to get closer to him. Chapter 551. Although Yi Tianyun had never taken the Royal Phoenix Blood Essence, he knew that it would be beneficial to him if he had more of it. Because from the information he got from the appraisal eye, Yi Tianyun knew how precious this thing was. The Imperial Phoenix Blood Essence was able to suppress even evil souls, so its effects were evident. I thought you really didn't want any reward, but it seems that there is still something that you are interested in. Bai Shui Huang looked at him and smiled. Royal Phoenix Blood Essence is so precious, I thought it wouldn't be in the list. After all, it can suppress even the evil soul. Tianyun did think so. He didn't feel much about the sacred tools, but the Phoenix Blood Essence was an exception. How could such a precious thing be used as a reward? Royal Phoenix Blood Essence is precious, but the merit of the Divine Envoy is enough to obtain it. Bai Shui Huang smiled and said, in that case, I will give you a drop of Royal Phoenix Blood Essence. How about it? Of course, no problem. This was an unexpected surprise. The reward for completing the task was more than enough to satisfy the reward. Although it wasn't given by them, it was impossible for such a task to appear without their help. Elder Luo and the others looked at each other. They didn't even think about this kind of reward, but they knew what to do after a little thought. With Yi Tianyun's strength, if they didn't give him a good reward, they were afraid that he would be disappointed. Immediately, Bai Shui Huang took out a box, which was exactly the same as the one in shopkeeper Ye's hand. Obviously, it was sealed inside. Every drop of phoenix blood essence was sealed in this box to prevent it from being stolen and to prevent the energy inside from escaping. It's still the same, I'm afraid you need to unseal this box. Bai Shui Huang said and handed it to him. Thank you, Patriarch. Yi Tianyun took it. This was not a difficult task for him. By the way, I heard that you have obtained the inheritance. I wonder if you can tell me about the situation over there? Bai Shui Huang asked. Only by giving him a reward and getting familiar with each other could he ask about the situation. Actually, it's nothing, it's the inheritance of the heaven-creating divine king. Yi Tianyun didn't need to be too secretive, because even if Bai Shui Huang begged him to teach her, Yi Tianyun wouldn't be able to do it. These martial arts could not be imparted to others, unless the other party was the inheritor. They had already sworn an oath, and if they were to impart it casually, it would be a violation of the oath. Even when the heaven-creating divine king was still in this world, he still wouldn't pass it on at will. He would still choose outstanding descendants. The inheritance of the heaven-creating divine king. Their eyes were filled with shock. Although they already knew that it wouldn't be simple, when they truly learned that it was the inheritance of a divine king, they were still deeply shocked. They couldn't help but reveal envious gazes. In fact, a god king had appeared in their phoenix race before, but that was a very long time ago. The inheritance that was left behind could still be preserved. The key was that the inheritance of the heaven-creating divine king had a completely different meaning. They had all heard of the story of the heaven-creating divine king. He was a creator divine pattern master. Just this title alone was enough to shock the entire underworld. Congratulations, divine messenger. Not only did you help us eradicate the forces of the heavenly netherworld divine kingdom, but you also obtained the inheritance of the heaven-creating divine king. Bai Shui Huang's beautiful eyes flickered. It's just luck. Yi Tianyun smiled and said, luck is also a kind of strength. Bai Shui Huang smiled and said, Divine Messenger, you must be tired after rushing all the way back. We won't disturb your rest. Basically, everything that needs to be understood has been understood, so they didn't want to keep Yi Tianyun here. Yi Tianyun nodded. He also wanted to spend some time to absorb the Imperial Phoenix blood essence. He had planned to absorb it before, but he didn't have the time to do so. If there's any action, please come to me. I'll be happy to participate in this kind of thing. Yi Tianyun smiled. Although he killed Ming Chen, he was still happy to eradicate the heavenly netherworld divine kingdom. Since Divine Messenger said so, of course, we won't be polite. If there's an important action, we'll let you participate. Bai Shui Huang said with a serious expression. Remember not to take the Imperial Phoenix blood essence at will, at least dilute it before taking it. Otherwise, even if you have the immortal fire, it will still be very painful to absorb. She thought that Yi Tianyun would definitely absorb the Imperial Phoenix blood essence, so she reminded him. I will. Yi Tianyun nodded. After saying goodbye, Yi Tianyun brought Yen and the others back to his room. After asking Pu Ren to look after Yen, he went to the cultivation room alone. Then, he took out the first drop of Imperial Phoenix blood essence, looked at it a little, and swallowed it without hesitation. Although Bai Shui Huang said that he must be careful when taking the Imperial Phoenix blood essence, he still chose to take it directly. He believed that he could withstand the pain. He has the Dragon God's bloodline in his body, so he doesn't know if he will obtain the Phoenix bloodline after absorbing the Imperial Phoenix blood essence. After entering his mouth, a terrible heat flowed down his throat. It was like drinking magma, making his throat feel extremely painful. What's more terrifying is the terrifying Phoenix fire crazily rushed to his limbs, as if burning his meridians to ashes. If it was a cultivator with a lower cultivation, he would definitely be burned to death if he consumed it. But he is not a normal cultivator, he is a strong cultivator with a super strong physique. Humph! Lee Dong-yun snorted and quickly began to suppress the power of the phoenix fire. The immortal fire in his body beat madly and easily absorbed the phoenix fire. Under the crazy suppression, even the imperial phoenix blood essence can be easily suppressed. Soon, the blood began to become docile and eventually became a part of his body. Ding! Consumed imperial phoenix blood essence, obtained imperial phoenix bloodline, first grade. The next level requires 500,000 crazy point to upgrade. It's normal for Lee Dong-yun to obtain first grade phoenix bloodline so easily. A drop of imperial phoenix blood essence is only first grade. The point is that later he can use crazy point to upgrade it, which is something that they can't even imagine. If you want to upgrade the phoenix blood essence, you can only do it by constantly consuming it. Lee Dong-yun doesn't need to do that, he can simply use crazy point to upgrade it. Let me try the effect. Lee Dong-yun stood up, his eyes surged with immortal fire, and the next moment, his whole body immediately burst with terrifying immortal fire, and even a few phoenix feathers grew behind him, indicating that he has the phoenix bloodline. Chapter 552. The effect of Imperial Phoenix bloodline is amazing. This is not beyond his expectation. This is blood essence can even suppress evil soul. How can the effect be bad? This effect is really good. The remaining drop of Phoenix blood essence will be left for others to use. He doesn't need it for the time being. The rest can be upgraded with crazy point. This drop of blood essence is undoubtedly the best choice. He will give it to his subordinates who have a good physique of fire attribute. Upgrade, Imperial Phoenix bloodline. Ding, deducted 500,000 crazy point, successfully upgraded Imperial Phoenix bloodline, the power of immortal fire tripled, speed increased to 7 times. Next level, requires 5 million crazy point. This Imperial Phoenix blood essence requires much higher crazy point than Dragon God bloodline, but the effect is amazing. It's not that Dragon God bloodline is bad, the effect is different, the consumption of crazy point is relatively different. 500,000 crazy point is still a piece of cake, it's relatively easy to earn crazy point. Well, I still need about 30 million crazy point to reach 50 million crazy point, this number is really scary. Lee Dong-yun shook his head, after saving for so long he only got more than 20 million crazy point. If he wants to upgrade crazy mode, it will take a relatively long time. For now, it was better for him to focus on leveling up his other skills. It was best to improve them in all aspects. After all, 50 million crazy point can upgrade a lot of skills to a higher level. Most of them are very useful, only when the level is upgraded will the effect be amazing. After absorbing the crazy point, he walked out of the cultivation room and just came out. The guard next to him hurriedly said, "Sir Divine Envoy, Elder Luo asked you to hurry to find him. He said he has something important to tell you." Lee Dong-yun quickly went to find Elder Luo. Elder Luo is not there. He is accompanying his granddaughter in Qingyaju. As long as there is nothing to do, he will play with his granddaughter. When he just came back, Elder Luo saw him and walked over and said, "Our people sent back information. Heavenly Netherworld Divine Nation sent people to the mortal world. Although I don't know what they are going to do, I am afraid it will be bad for you, so I have to tell you about it." Didn't they send people to the mortal world? Ming Chen is dead? Lee Dong-yun frowned, his heart suddenly sank. He didn't expect to hear such bad news as soon as he came out. Although they didn't know if they would cause trouble for them when they went to the mortal world, no matter what, they would more or less be a little worried when they went to the mortal world. "I'm not sure about this. We only know that they are going to the mortal world. Most of the people they sent are at least at the core transformation stage, and they are going in batches. According to what we know, there are no less than 5 Void Spirit stage experts and 1 Spirit King stage expert, but he is just a first-layer Spirit King stage expert. Since he has just broken through not long ago, the restrictions are not that strong. It will be relatively easier for him to go to the mortal world. Should we send a few Void Spirit stage experts to support him?" Elder Luo's expression was solemn. He didn't know what power Lee Dong-yun had in the mortal world, but he treated Lee Dong-yun as his own friend and would definitely care about him. He couldn't send any Spirit King stage cultivators, not because he didn't want to, but because he couldn't. Therefore, they could only send Void Spirit stage cultivators. No, I will go alone, Lee Yun said solemnly. If you go alone, can you go back? Elder Luo was startled. Tianyun was so strong, how could he go back the way he came? No matter what, I have to go back and get rid of them. No matter what they do, as long as they can threaten my power, I must eradicate them. Lee Yun looked at Elder Luo coldly and said, How long have they been gone? 2 days ago, they didn't go for too long. Elder Luo said. Lee Yun stayed in the cultivation room for several days. Who would have thought that after Ming Chen died, the heavenly netherworld divine nation would still send people to go to the mortal world? It can only be said that conquering the mortal world has always been their idea. Ming Chen was just the one who carried it out. Now that he is dead, someone else will take over. 2 days ago? Then I will go back now. Lee Yun said. Daddy, are you leaving again? Yen hugged his leg and didn't want to let him go. Oh yes, I have to go do something. You stay here and accompany your grandfather. Lee Yun said. I will be back soon. Don't worry. Okay. Yen didn't leave with him this time. She was a little more sensible now and wouldn't pester him. Next time I come back, I will bring you delicious food. Yun patted her little head and immediately patted the ice phoenix next to him. Let's go, old friend. The ice phoenix let loose an excited cry. She could finally get out of here. How could she not be excited? Elder Luo, help me tell the patriarch that I can't stay here for the time being. When Lee Yun sat on the ice phoenix, he turned his head and said to Elder Luo, Yes, you will always be the divine messenger of our Phoenix clan. We will wait for your return. Elder Luo looked at him and said. Lee Yun nodded and looked at Yen for the last time. He sighed deeply and left on the ice phoenix directly to Guangyun City. Ren Liangqin and the others were still waiting for him there, so he had to go back with them. At the same time, Ren Liangqin and the others had just come back from an inn in Guangyun City. They all had a satisfied smile on their faces. It is indeed the netherworld. The demonic beasts in the illusory fog forest are very good. We have made a lot of money this time. It is different with a sacred weapon. It is very easy to kill them. It is like cutting melons and vegetables. Yang Jiwen smiled happily and rubbed the sacred weapon in his hand. Lung Hu and the others were the same. With a good weapon, it was undoubtedly much easier to hunt. They had stayed here for a long time, so they couldn't stay in their room all the time. They still chose to go out and train. It was not easy to come to the netherworld. Of course, they had to train and strengthen their cultivation. I don't know when boss will come back. It has been a month. They shook their heads, but they didn't show any depressed expression. They all chose to stay here and wait for Lee Yun to come back. Buzz! When they were wiping their weapons, a large array suddenly appeared in the room and sealed it. There was no way to escape. At this time, 2 figures emerged from the side. They were 2 Void Spirit stage experts. Chapter 553. The entire room was instantly enveloped by a surging energy, sealing all the exits. There was no way to escape. At the very least, with their cultivation, they would not be able to break out of this formation in a short period of time. Clearly, this formation had been secretly set up long ago. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for it to appear here. Taking advantage of their absence, it had secretly come up and set it up without them knowing. The appearance of 2 Void Spirit stage experts immediately made them realize that they had fallen into a trap. You're finally back. You've really made us wait for a long time. The first Void Spirit stage expert walked out. His cultivation was not high, only at the 3rd level of Void Spirit stage, but for the 3 of them, it was enough. Not to mention 2 Void Spirit stage experts, just one of them was enough to crush them. That's right. I've been waiting here for a long time. What a waste of time. Fortunately, you're back. Otherwise, I would have set up this formation in vain. Another Void Spirit stage expert smiled ferociously. Both of them didn't look very old, around 40 years old. Being able to have such powerful cultivation, They could be considered to have a very promising future. Ren Liangchen and the others' faces darkened. This wasn't a good thing. So it's fellow Taoist Jin. May I know what you mean by this? Ren Liangchen maintained his composure and stared at the man in front of him with a sharp gaze. They had seen these two people before. One of them was Jin Feng, and the other was Zhao Quan. They were both experts who were just passing by. He didn't expect them to come knocking on his door today. They had even greeted each other previously. Among them, Jin Feng was a pretty good 5th-grade divine inscriptionist. He could be considered to have cultivated a little, but he wasn't very proficient in it. Even so, a 5th-grade divine inscriptionist who could set up a grand formation was sufficient to temporarily trap them. Even without the divine inscription's grand formation, Qin Wenyan could still kill them. With their cultivation bases, it would be extremely easy to deal with them. The problem was that he was worried that they would run away, which would make it extremely difficult to deal with them. There were rules in Guangyun City. No one was allowed to duel in private. If they were discovered, they would never be able to enter Guangyun City. Thus, they set up a large formation to seal off all the situations and sounds in this place. This way, they wouldn't have to worry about being discovered by the people outside when dealing with them. Nothing much. Just hand over the sacred artifact in your hands. We'll borrow it for a bit. Jin Feng snickered. Looking at the sacred artifact in Yang Jiwen's hand, his eyes filled with greed. The faces of Ren Liangchen and the others darkened. As expected, they were eyeing the saint weapons in their hands. When they were hunting demonic beasts, they happened to be seen by them, and now they were here. This so-called borrowing was definitely borrowing without returning it. After pondering for a moment, Ren Liangchen had no choice but to compromise. If it's a sage artifact, we can lend it to fellow Taoist Jin to play with. They couldn't escape, and they couldn't block their attacks. If it was just one of them, they might be able to escape, but now they had to face two people. Two Void Spirit stage experts. This is really not enough. No, at least 3. We are short of 3 divine instruments. They chuckled. They were not afraid that Ren Liangchen would refuse. If he refused, he would die. There's no need for you two fellow Taoists to ask for so much, right? At most, we can provide you with 2. We have to keep the other one, Ren Liangchen bargained. Can't I have one in each hand? Jin Feng snickered. Not one less, or don't even think about walking out of this door. Their faces darkened. Originally, they wanted to compromise and hand over 2 divine instruments to save their lives. It was better than keeping the divine instruments. If they lost their lives, no matter how many divine instruments they had, it would be useless. Now, they were asking them to hand over all the divine instruments. Obviously, they wanted to take all the divine instruments from the beginning, and they would not leave a single one for them. The 3 of them looked at each other and saw the decision in each other's eyes. Ren Liangchen nodded and said to them, "Fine, we will give you 3 divine instruments." Although it was painful, they had no choice but to do so in order to survive. Divine instruments were just external objects, and they had to do this to save their lives. This was the tragedy of being too weak. They could be bullied and robbed at will, and they could only accept it. After saying that, they threw the 3 divine instruments in front of Jin Feng and the others. It could be said that these 3 divine instruments were the most precious things they had, and the rest were far from being comparable to these divine instruments. When Yi Tianyun gave them the divine instruments, they were excited for a while, but they did not expect that they should not show their wealth, and in the end, they were targeted by Jin Feng and the others. They were simply hunting demonic beasts outside, and they also knew that they should not show their wealth, so they only took out the divine instruments to hunt demonic beasts when there was no one around. Who knew that Jin Feng and the others happened to see it, and they were immediately attracted. They even set up a big formation in their room, waiting for them to jump into the trap. Jin Feng and the others' eyes lit up, and they quickly picked up the 3 divine instruments and touched them. Really good stuff, really good divine instruments. Their eyes were filled with ecstasy. Although their cultivation was not low, their wealth was still on the low side. In the mortal world, Void Spirit stage experts could basically have a divine instrument, but in the mortal world, it was very unlikely that they could get one. After all, Void Spirit Stage experts might not be everywhere in the mortal world, but at least they were not as high and mighty as they were in the mortal world. Can you let us go now? Ren Liangshan's eyes were cold, and he felt disgusted looking at their expressions, but he had no other choice. Hee, what do you think? Jin Feng took the divine sword and patted his palm, and his eyes were filled with ruthlessness. Although I have the weapon, I still want to try it on you, and see if this divine sword is sharp or not, and see how effective it is. You are going back on your words. Ren Liangshan and the others' faces turned cold as they really could not believe their words, but in the end, they still chose to believe them. After all, if they resisted, they would definitely die. They did not expect that if they did not resist, they would definitely die. What do you mean by going back on my words? It sounds so bad. I just want to use you to test my sword, and see if you can dodge my attack. Jin Feng smiled sinisterly. Yes, we are just practicing our swordsmanship. You just need to dodge our attacks. We will not hurt you. Zhao Quan smiled sinisterly. It was impossible for them to let them go. Even if they handed over the divine sword, they would still kill them. No one would believe this bullshit, as it was obvious that Zhao Quan wanted to kill them, but he did not make it sound so bad. Set up the formation. Ren Liangshan and the other two's faces turned cold, and they quickly set up the formation, ready to block their attacks. Although it was meaningless, at least they could put up a fight and not let themselves be captured. It seems that we can't wait for our boss to come back. Yes, it seems that we are going to miss our promise. Their eyes were filled with sadness, as they did not expect that they would not be able to wait for Yi Tianyun to come back after he left. Practice swordsmanship? How about I practice with you? Chapter 554. In this room that was full of divine rune seals, a person suddenly appeared at the side, startling everyone. When Ren Liangshan and the others saw the person who walked out, they were overjoyed. Boss! They shouted in surprise, and the stone in their heart was lifted. As long as Yi Tianyun can come back, everything will be fine. Yi Tianyun nodded. He had just arrived at Guangyun City and was looking for them when he saw this scene. Then, he teleported to them without breaking the formation. He didn't want them to run away. Who are you? How did you get in? They were shocked. When did Yi Tianyun come in? They had no idea. He just appeared beside them all of a sudden, startling them. Most importantly, the formation around them was not broken. How did he get in under such circumstances? You don't need to know that. All you need to know is that I came here to practice my sword skills. Yi Tianyun smiled. He held the high-grade sacred sword in his hand tightly and walked toward them step by step. High-grade sacred sword? They gasped, and their eyes were filled with greed. A high-grade sacred sword was much more precious than a low-grade sacred sword. Even 20 low-grade sacred swords couldn't compare to a high-grade sacred sword. Although I don't know how you came in, I really have to thank you for bringing the treasure to us. They laughed. They had no idea what kind of person they were facing. Then they flashed and surrounded Yi Tianyun. They looked at him with a sinister smile and said, "Did they call you boss just now? It seems like you are their boss. I didn't expect you to have reinforcements. However, as long as you hand over the high-grade sacred sword, we promise to let you leave. Otherwise, swish." At this time, a sword light flashed. They didn't even have time to react. It was so fast that they couldn't even see it. When they looked at Yi Tianyun again, they realized that his hand didn't move at all. He was still holding the sword and walking toward them. What was that just now? They frowned, but didn't feel anything wrong. In the next moment, they felt a sharp pain in their arms. Immediately after, a pillar of blood spurted out. They didn't know when, but there were many deep wounds on their arms. However, they didn't lose their arms. They screamed in pain and hurriedly retreated while holding their arms. The bleeding stopped very quickly, but their eyes were filled with terror. None of them knew when Yi Tianyun attacked. All they saw was a flash of sword light, followed by a deep wound on his arm. Ren Liangshan and the others gasped. They did not know when Yi Tianyun had made his move. They did not expect his cultivation to improve so much in just a few days. The two Void Spirit Stage experts were easily defeated. They couldn't even see any attacks. I'm already very slow, but I didn't expect you to still be unable to dodge. Come, let's continue practicing. Lee Tianyun smiled. In their eyes, this smile was like that of a terrifying demon. Kill him! Jin Feng and the others roared. Since things had come to this, they had no choice but to fight. Those who were not injured quickly grabbed their weapons and attacked from both sides. Everyone burst out with their strongest chi. The chi of Void Spirit stage experts crazily surged in all directions and slammed on the formation, causing the whole formation to shake. The sword light flashed in the air, turning into a net of light that enveloped the inn. Wherever it went, the furniture would be shattered into powder. If it were not for the support of the Grand Array, the sword light would have already soared into the sky and blown up the inn. They could still suppress the sword light and not be so overbearing. If the sword light broke through the formation, they would be exposed. Lee Tianyun's eyes turned cold. He quickly pulled out his sword and slashed forward. The sword light flashed again. They were stunned for a moment. Then, they felt a cold sensation on their arms. Soon after, they saw their arms fall from their arms like toy blocks, directly falling to the ground. Poochie! A terrifying pillar of blood gushed out from the broken hole, dyeing the ground red. When they felt the intense pain, they screamed in pain. But what they felt was fear, deep fear. If they were careless before, then this time, they would definitely take it seriously. Who knew that they would be killed in a second and their arms would be directly cut off? They could feel that Lee Tianyun had held back this time. Otherwise, his sword would have pierced through their hearts. You, who the hell are you? They were terrified and completely panicked. I'm not a god. I'm just taking care of my little brother. Don't you want to practice swordsmanship? I'll accompany you. It's not over yet. Take your time. Lee Tianyun smiled. The Nether Heaven Divine Sword in his hand was not stained with a single drop of blood. It looked so clean. No, we were just playing with them. Please forgive us, Senior. They had a bitter face. They didn't expect that they would kick an iron plate this time. Moreover, it was a very hard iron plate. Yes, we were just playing. It was really just a simple practice of swordsmanship. We definitely didn't mean to hurt them. The weapons we borrowed from them will be returned soon. We have never used a sacred weapon before, so we just wanted to borrow it for fun. We really didn't mean any harm. Zhao Quan forced a smile. The bleeding had stopped, but his arm was crippled. Their faces were pale. It was unknown whether it was because of the shock or the injury. Don't worry, I was also just practicing swordsmanship. It's just that I didn't control my strength well. I'm sorry. Lee Tianyun smiled. The Nether Heaven Divine Sword in his hand moved slightly. A beam of light flashed again. The next moment, their bodies fell. One of their legs had been cut off. Fear, deep fear. They were killed invisibly. In the blink of an eye, their body parts were removed one by one. Ah, sir, we were really wrong. We were really wrong. We shouldn't have been greedy. Please let us go. They kept screaming and begging for mercy. They couldn't even run away now. All they could do was move their bodies to the wall, trying to avoid Lee Tianyun's pursuit. I'm just practicing swordsmanship, really. Lee Tianyun said with a slight smile. It's so charming. Their eyes were wide open. Deep down, their eyes were filled with deep fear. This was the scariest smile and the most terrifying swordsmanship they had ever seen in their lives. At this moment, their hearts were green with regret. They didn't expect to lose their lives in order to snatch the 3 sacred weapons. They originally wanted to kill them. Ren Liangqin and the others' cultivation was not high, but they had sacred weapons. It was very likely that their background was not simple. Chapter 555. Jin Feng and Zhao Quan dragged a trail of blood towards the corner of the wall. Although they lost an arm and a leg, they still have the other foot, so they can still move their injured arm a little bit. Because of this, they dragged a long trail of blood on the ground. It looked very shocking. But the pain in their body was completely swallowed by the panic in their heart. They didn't feel any pain at all. They just kept moving backward, trying to escape from here. Let's go! When they were about to reach the wall, Jin Feng and Zhao Quan slammed the ground. Even if their arms were injured, they still used all their strength to jump up and rush out of the wall. Although there was a big formation around them, they knew where the exit was, so they could still escape. But a figure had already flashed in front of them and waved a sword at them. A sword light flashed in front of their eyes, and immediately they fell to the ground, twitching. They saw that there were more deep wounds on their necks, blood kept flowing out, one sword cut their throat. They will definitely die. You, they stared at Tianyun. Except for the word you, they couldn't squeeze out half a word. Not long after, they were completely dead, turned into two corpses lying on the ground. Ding, successfully killed Jin Feng, gained 13 million EXP, 4,300 crazy point, 300 SBS, 500 divine rune mastery. Obtained tyrant rune paper, rare, heavenly raising sword, low-grade sacred tool. Ding, successfully killed Zhao Quan, gained 12 million EXP, crazy point. Killing them gave a considerable amount of EXP, but the items he got were relatively shabby. At least for him, who was used to killing Spirit King stage cultivators, it was indeed shabby. But low-grade sacred tools will still drop. Even if they don't, they will still drop something. Some of the things that dropped were related to them, some had nothing to do with them. For example, tyrant rune paper, they definitely don't have it. There are still a lot of things. Tyrant rune paper is indeed a good thing. This thing can be used to carve divine rune. He has used it once before, but he doesn't want to waste it. The more he used it, the less he could use it. Before he completely stabilized himself, there was no need to stick a tyrant pattern paper on every weapon he saw. This was undoubtedly a huge waste. In the mall, the price of tyrant pattern paper is equivalent to 5 million crazy points. Although he can afford it, he can't afford to waste it. Boss, you're finally back. If it wasn't for you, I'm afraid we wouldn't have been able to wait for your return. They were incomparably delighted. They had waited here for so long for Tianyun's return. Yes, I was busy with something and this happened when I came back. Tianyun nodded, but he wasn't worried about any problems. If they were attacked, the system would notify them. This was because they were their own generals. If their generals were about to die, they would definitely have to report it. At that time, he could only use the divine general summoning order to summon them to his side. This was the best solution. Sigh, it's all our fault. If only we had just stayed here, we wouldn't have ended up provoking them. Yang Jiwen sighed. Although a sacred artifact was very good, it could easily attract the jealousy of others. What's the point of staying here? The best way is to make yourself stronger. No matter how many of these people come, we'll kill them all. Tianyun said coldly. Yes. The three of them were shocked. They had been blindly admitting their mistakes and had forgotten the most essential thing. As long as their cultivation was high enough, there was nothing to be afraid of. Pack up, we're preparing to return to the mortal world. Tianyun stretched out his hand. The weapons on the ground flew over and fell into their hands. They hurriedly took the weapons and held them carefully. To Tianyun, these were no different from scrap metal. But to them, they were very precious treasures. Are we going back now? Their eyes lit up. Yes, and it's an urgent matter. We have to hurry back to avoid any unnecessary trouble. Tianyun's eyes turned cold. If the people of Nether Heaven Divine Nation were to harm his forces, then don't blame him for being impolite. They quickly packed up. After leaving the city, Tianyun stretched out his hand. The ice phoenix quickly flew out and stunned them. Phoenix! They swallowed their saliva. This was a divine beast. They didn't expect it to become Tianyun's mount. I didn't expect boss to tame a phoenix in the blink of an eye. This is a divine beast. Yes, boss is amazing. Itsuke, all right, stop flattering me. I won't fall for it. Hurry up and get on. Your flying speed is too slow. Tianyun gestured for them to get on. At their speed, who knew how long it would take to reach the passageway? The Ice Phoenix's speed was top-notch. Its cultivation was much higher than theirs. It was definitely dozens of times faster than theirs. The time it took to reach the passageway was much shorter. The Ice Phoenix was very unhappy that others climbed onto its back. As long as it wasn't its master, it was a little repulsed. Alright, just sit for a while. I'll reward you with some elixirs later. Yi Tianyun smiled and comforted it. Only then did the ice phoenix calm down. However, it still couldn't help but snort, feeling very unhappy. The ice phoenix quickly flew up. Its huge body could carry 5 or 6 people. Soon, it turned into a light blue stream of light and disappeared into the sky. The passageway to the mortal realm was quite far from where they were. Under the ice phoenix's guidance, it would take them a few days to reach it. If they were flying at their current speed, it would take them at least a month or so. We're here, Tianyun said as he looked ahead. So this is the passageway to the mortal realm? It's much better than coming down here. Not far away, there was a fairyland-like area. The mountains were verdant and the waters were clear. Birds were chirping and flowers were fragrant. There was even white mist swirling around it. It really did look like a fairyland. You're thinking too much. That's the passageway we're going to. Yi Tianyun pointed to the sky in front of them. Everyone looked over and saw that the sky was covered in dark clouds. Lightning flashed and thunder roared. Thick bolts of lightning continuously struck down from the sky, smashing into the ground. With a loud boom, the ground was charred black. More accurately, there were countless charred areas in that area. There wasn't a single place in this area that was unharmed. Compared to the surrounding mountains with verdant hills and clear waters, it was a world of difference. From the looks of it, this place was also a beautiful place. It was just that it had been ravaged by the lightning for so long that it had become so terrifying. That's our passageway. Chapter 556. The terrifying lightning passageway did not require one to pass through as many places as before in order to descend from above. It was very simple. After passing through this place, one could successfully reach the mortal world. It was that simple. It was easy to say, but it was extremely difficult to do. The higher one's cultivation was, the harder it was to go up. The heavenly lightning that was flickering nonstop was no ordinary lightning. Instead, it was world spirit lightning that specialized in stopping those with powerful cultivations. The higher one's cultivation was, the more terrifying the boundary lightning was. If a holy king went up, he would probably attract even more terrifying lightning. At that time, even a holy king would be repelled, so it was not easy to go up. Even if a holy king could successfully go up, it was estimated that he would be half dead. The power of a holy king was very strong, but it did not mean that he was invincible. Under the boundary lightning, a holy king could be easily suppressed, and a little carelessness could lead to death. For those with low cultivation, the boundary lightning was very weak, but it was not easy to go up. At least, one must have some treasures or be not weak to go up easily. At this moment, there were people riding on flying magical treasures, and even flying ships, flying towards the black clouds. They were all in groups. In addition to going up in groups, more people flew up alone. Their cultivation was not high. They were all at the core transformation stage. Those who rode on flying magic weapons were naturally at the core transformation stage. These people could not fly, so they could only go up with flying magic weapons. The ship of the heavenly netherworld divine nation, Yi Tianyun's eyes narrowed. At this time, the flying ship that was about to fly into the dark clouds was engraved with a huge netherworld character representing the power of the heavenly netherworld divine nation. Although there were many forces here, very few people would call themselves netherworld. Even in the netherworld, very few people would call themselves netherworld. Boss, what's wrong? They did not know that Yi Tianyun was going to deal with the heavenly netherworld divine nation, so they were curious why his aura suddenly became fierce. Our future enemy will be the heavenly netherworld divine nation. Are you willing to continue to follow me? Yi Tianyun said in a low voice. The enemy is the heavenly netherworld divine nation? They were startled. Although they had not been here for a long time, they had a general understanding of the forces here. The heavenly netherworld divine kingdom was one of the top 5 forces. They did not expect that Yi Tianyun would actually provoke the heavenly netherworld divine kingdom. However, they didn't think too much about it. After looking at each other, they said, "Of course we'll follow you." Not to mention the Nether Heaven Divine Kingdom, even if it's the Golden Bamboo Divine Kingdom, as long as you want to fight them, we'll be willing to fight with you to the end. The Golden Bamboo Divine Kingdom's comprehensive strength was the strongest divine kingdom in the entire Netherworld. It was rumored that there were countless golden bamboos there, and all of them cultivated the most tyrannical metal attribute power, making them invincible. Alright, let's start with the ship and intercept them. Immediately, Tianyun put on a mask for himself and the rest of them, putting on a simple disguise. They would still have to come down in the future. In order to be able to move around here easily, it was best to conceal themselves. Following that, he recalled the Ice Phoenix and led the way towards the ship. At this time, on the treasure ship of the Nether Heaven Divine Kingdom, many cultivators were chatting with each other. Looking at the approaching black clouds, none of them showed a timid expression. After passing through the ship, we can smoothly reach the mortal world. Then we can start killing, right? Yes, originally, there was a force in the mortal world called the Netherworld Empire. But who knew that it was overthrown by a force in the mortal world? Now they sent us to annihilate them. Hehe, so we can make meritorious contributions? My blade hasn't tasted blood for a long time. I don't know what the girls in the mortal world are like. If they are a little bit more beautiful, They looked at each other and sneered. They could see a lot of meaning from each other's eyes. They all wanted to eradicate the forces in the mortal world and re-establish a more powerful empire in order to have a place in the mortal world. On this treasure ship, there were many cultivators. The lowest cultivation level was at the Spirit Core stage, and the strongest was at the Void Spirit stage. There were more than 1,000 cultivators on this treasure ship. Most of them were at the Spirit Core stage, the rest were at the Core Transformation stage, and the rest were at the Void Spirit stage. But this was not the first group, it was the second group. When Tianyun received the message, there was already a group of them going to the mortal world. This was the second group. After all, many days had passed, and it took them more than a week to get to the mortal world. This time was very short, but for them, it was more than enough to enter the mortal world. Here, they only needed to go through the passage to reach the mortal world, unlike the passage to the ghost world. Originally, the area around the teleportation formation was not dangerous, but as time passed, it happened to be a place of great danger, so it became extremely dangerous. Moreover, only there could be an entrance to the mortal world. Even if it was a place of great danger, it could only be built there. Therefore, from the beginning, the passage to the netherworld was not deliberately made to be so dangerous. Everything was formed by the heaven and earth itself. Just as they were about to go up with a beautiful vision, four figures suddenly rushed over and directly crashed into their group. Boom! Along with a loud bang, the entire treasured vessel was on the verge of collapse. As it swayed violently, many disciples were blasted flying. Those who couldn't fly screamed and fell from the sky, and finally, they were smashed into meat patties. Everyone looked at the treasure ship in horror and found that there was a huge hole in the treasure ship. At this time, a sword light flashed, and wherever it went, blood splashed everywhere, and all the disciples were cut into two pieces. The overbearing sword light slashed horizontally in all directions, and it was unstoppable. "For you!" One of the Void Spirit stage powerhouses roared and quickly intercepted. He held a sword in his hand, and without hesitation, he heavily slashed down from the sky. As the guards of this treasure ship, if the treasure ship sank, they would be severely punished. The answer he got was a sword light, and before he could react, he was already cut into two pieces, and his head was directly separated from his body. Before he died, he didn't understand what was going on. All he saw was a figure waving the sword in his hand, and a pair of cold and terrible eyes. Tianyun didn't talk too much with them, and immediately entered the killing mode, madly beheading the surrounding cultivators. They heard their conversation, and sure enough, they went up to wipe out the Heavenly Clouds mansion. In fact, the Heavenly Clouds mansion was just a stepping stone for them, and they would inherit the will of the Netherworld Empire and continue to occupy the other continents to completely occupy the mortal world. Chapter 557. Yi Tianyun acted as the vanguard, and he didn't answer any of their questions. Ren Liangchen and the others also entered the killing mode, and they didn't stop at all. With a holy tool in their hands, even if they had to face a lot of core transformation stage powerhouses, they could easily deal with them. It was as easy as cutting melons and vegetables. 10 times EXP card use. 50 times EXP card use. Experience cards were constantly being used. Experience cards that he had on him were used up, and those that he didn't have on him were bought from the shop. There were thousands of cultivators on this ship, so how could they miss it? After activating the skill, the EXP cards started to increase like crazy. Although the core transformation stage cultivators still gained a few million EXP with so many EXP cards, it was still a good thing to accumulate. Moreover, there were also many void spirit stage cultivators on this ship, and they could gain a lot of EXP points by killing them. For a moment, there were endless screams, and some of them tried to escape from this ship. Because they couldn't fight back at all, they were being slaughtered and they couldn't fight back at all. When they were about to escape, a figure suddenly appeared in front of them. It was Yi Tianyun. They looked at him in shock as if they had seen a ghost. They didn't know when he had appeared in front of them. Wasn't he killing other cultivators at the edge of the battlefield? When they turned around, they found that Yi Tianyun was still killing, and there were more Yi Tianyun. There were 4 Yi Tianyun. Under such circumstances, Yi Tianyun had to use his doppelgangers, otherwise, many of them would have escaped. The entire treasure ship wasn't small. If they hid in a corner and escaped when he wasn't paying attention, it would be very easy for them to escape. Therefore, as soon as they entered the ship, they immediately used their doppelgangers to kill the cultivators. With the help of the 7 of them, they quickly wiped out these cultivators. All of them screamed in pain, crying for their parents. But it was useless because no one came to save them. No one had expected that someone would suddenly come to stop them. This was the famous ship of the heavenly netherworld divine nation, so stopping them was equivalent to not giving face to the heavenly netherworld divine nation. Unfortunately, there were people who did not give face to the heavenly netherworld divine nation. Yi Tianyun was one, and the Phoenix race was another. A core transformation stage cultivator tried to escape, but before he could get far, a flash of fire engulfed him and burned him to ashes. Yi Tianyun noticed this flame, and a smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. Clearly, there were traces of the Phoenix race here. When he took action, he began to help eliminate some of the fish that had escaped the net. They did not dare to provoke a direct conflict with the Nether Heaven Divine Kingdom, but sneak attacks were not a problem. Many of those who slipped through the net were caught by them, and not a single one escaped. Although Yi Tianyun said that he didn't need help, the Phoenix race still sent a lot of people to help. Not only for Yi Tianyun, but also for themselves. The heavenly netherworld divine kingdom had to be eradicated. If they didn't, they would be the ones dying. Boom. Finally, accompanied by a loud noise, the whole ship was engulfed in flames. It was like a huge fireball in the air. Soon, the huge fireball smashed into the ground, and with a boom, it smashed a big hole in the ground. The treasured ship of the heavenly netherworld divine kingdom was destroyed just like that. Thousands of cultivators were all killed, not a single one was spared. The rest of the cultivators who passed by were scared out of their wits, and they didn't dare to approach this place. The cultivators who were originally flying to the mortal world were scared out of their wits, and they didn't dare to stay for even a second. They suspected that there was a murderous maniac appearing, otherwise, why would he rush over and kill so many people? Regardless of whether it was related to them or not, they all fled to the side and looked at this side in horror. Ooh, boss, do you have more? The 3 of them were covered in sweat, and more of them were bloodstains. They didn't know whether it was their own or someone else's. Okay, let's go back. Yi Tianyun threw 3 bottles of elixirs to them, and they didn't hesitate to take them and stuff them into their mouths. Although his hands were stained with blood, Yi Tianyun never said that he wasn't a slaughterer. Killing was killing, and there was nothing to defend. Immediately, he flew them into the black clouds, and they soon disappeared in the black clouds. Many cultivators who were hiding on the side flew over again. Who are they? They even dared to intercept the ship of the heavenly netherworld divine kingdom. It's too scary, I don't know, but it's a good thing that someone can suppress the heavenly netherworld divine kingdom. The heavenly netherworld divine kingdom is too hateful. Previously, the forces of the heavenly netherworld divine kingdom looted the cities around us. They burned, killed, and looted. Shoo, don't talk so loudly. Let's leave quickly, or we will be the first to suffer. They didn't dare to continue the discussion here. They either left or followed them into the passage. However, most of them didn't dare to enter the passage. After passing through the passage, they would reach the mortal world. When they met Yi Tianyun and the others, only God knew if they would be killed. Therefore, they all dispersed and spread the news. The Nether Heaven divine nation would not be able to keep its face. After flying in with them, Yi Tianyun summoned the Ice Phoenix and gestured for them to sit on it. The Ice Phoenix screamed and quickly flew up to the thunderclouds. When the surrounding lightning sensed them, it quickly struck over. The thick divine lightning scared them out of their wits. At this time, he had the heavenly thunder divine bead in his hand. This was a treasure that he had obtained before. When he took it out, the surrounding lightning was quickly absorbed, and not a single one leaked out. No matter how much lightning came, the heavenly thunder divine bead could easily absorb it. However, this thing still had a storage limit, but at least it didn't. What a magical bead! They were surprised. No matter how powerful the divine lightning around them was, it was absorbed by the heavenly thunder divine bead. Hold on tight, we need to hurry back. Yi Tianyun's face was gloomy. Since the Spirit King stage experts weren't here, it meant that they were likely to pass through the passage or die in the passage. In any case, he had to return to the Heavenly Clouds mansion as soon as possible. A Spirit King stage expert could basically destroy everything, at least in the mortal world. Boom, boom, boom. Lightning kept coming from all directions, rushing towards Yi Tianyun. After all, his cultivation was the highest, so the lightning that attacked him was the thickest and most terrifying. Yi Tianyun looked up and saw that the divine lightning's combat power was as high as 50 to 60 million. Occasionally, 2 or 3 divine lightning with the combat power of 80 to 90 million would appear. No wonder the higher the cultivation, the harder it was to go up. Compared to the lightning that struck Ren Liangchen and the others, it was only a few million. Chapter 558. Go! The heavenly thunder divine pearl in Yi Tianyun's hand was almost full. When a thick bolt of lightning was about to strike, he quickly waved the heavenly thunder divine pearl in his hand, and a thick bolt of divine lightning immediately met it. Its power was even more terrifying than the bolt of lightning. Boom! When the two collided, the bolt of lightning was instantly devoured. The remaining divine lightning struck the surrounding black clouds, and finally disappeared without a trace, without any effect. This bolt of lightning was not the limit. If it really was the limit, holy kings would have gone up long ago, instead of being trapped below. Therefore, no matter what he did, the surrounding scenery would not be damaged at all. At this time, there were a few cultivators on the side, constantly resisting the divine lightning. Seeing that they were so relaxed and riding a phoenix, they were really envious. The number of bolts of lightning that fell here would not decrease because of the speed. It would be as much as it should be. Similarly, the faster one's speed was, the earlier one could get out and not be constantly struck by the lightning. Riding on the phoenix was much faster, and in the blink of an eye, they flew up. It seemed that it would not take too long for them to easily pass through this passage. I'm ready to go through. Yi Tianyun looked up ahead. As they flew forward, he saw a ray of light in front of him. Presumably, if they passed through this ray of light, they would successfully reach the mortal world. The process was not as terrifying as imagined, at least for them. With the heavenly thunder divine pearl, their cultivation was not very high, and the speed of the phoenix, they could easily go back. The danger was reduced to the minimum, and they could easily go back. The next moment, they disappeared in this light, as if passing through a layer of waterfall, drenching them. However, they were not wet at all. After passing through easily, they immediately rushed into the sky. At this time, what came into view was a boundless forest. This time, They were not teleported away casually, and they were still riding on the Ice Phoenix. There was nothing special about the surrounding environment. Below them was also an empty space, and there was no trace of a teleportation array. If they could go back from here, there would definitely be a teleportation array here. However, there was no teleportation array here, so if they wanted to go down, they still had to go through the Netherworld Passage. The Netherworld Passage was much easier than going up. If their cultivation was strong, they could easily pass without any pressure. Because no matter how strong he was, his surroundings wouldn't change. "We're back," Ren Liangshan said as he took a deep breath. There wasn't much difference between this place and the Netherworld, except that the spiritual energy here was far weaker than in the Netherworld. Although it was a little lacking, they were most familiar with it. Most importantly, with their cultivation, they would definitely be able to occupy a place here. They didn't have to worry about how many people would make an enemy out of them. There were quite a few Void Spirit stage powerhouses here, so there was no need to worry about this. "Well, let's go back now." Yi Tianyun controlled the Ice Phoenix and quickly flew back to his Heavenly Clouds mansion. The Heavenly Clouds continent, formerly known as the Nether continent, now began to build an imperial capital or a large number of cities. Many rebels, bandits, and the like were completely wiped out. They just want to make the whole continent a safe place without any disputes and create a harmonious Heavenly Cloud continent. They wanted to finish everything before Yi Tianyun returned. Because of this, Yi Tianyun gained a lot of EXP from eradicating the forces here. They thought that Yi Tianyun didn't know about it, but they didn't expect that Yi Tianyun knew about it and gained a lot of benefits from it. The accumulated EXP alone was enough for him to level up. Today, the imperial capital was still being built in an orderly manner by the spirit race. They wanted to build the safest imperial capital in the world. Even if a spirit king stage cultivator attacked them, they would be able to withstand their attacks. This was what they needed. "Old ancestor, don't you want to take a break?" The spirit race's old ancestor looked at him worriedly. The spirit race's old ancestor began to carve the divine runes on the wall. It was definitely several times sturdier than the Netherworld prison. Xiao Qin had poured in all his energy to forge it. "What's there to rest? I can still hold on." The spirit race's old ancestor said with a smile. "Don't think that I'm old, I'm stronger than you young people." The spirit race's old ancestor looked at him helplessly, but since the spirit race's old ancestor insisted, they could only let him do it. However, the other spirit race's old ancestor also continued to carve the divine runes, including Yi Qingxian and the others. As long as they were not lower than a 5th grade divine rune master, they would help to carve the divine rune great array. Carving the divine runes on the newly built city wall or on the ground was quite a big deal. Because Yi Tianyun had left a lot of resources for them, they could be so willful. Just when they thought they could carry on smoothly, someone suddenly sounded the alarm. The entire imperial capital was ringing, and even places more than 10 miles away could hear the alarm. Everyone looked up, and the spirit race's old ancestor flew directly to the city wall. Yi Qingxian and the others also stopped what they were doing and quickly went to the city wall to see what was going on. They didn't dare to say that they were the strongest force, but at least many empires didn't dare to attack them at will. Not only were they not weak, but they were also allied with the Heavenly Dragon Empire. Therefore, they were very safe in the Heavenly Clouds continent, and no one dared to attack them. Now that someone suddenly came to kill them, they wanted to see who it was. Treasure ship. When the spirit race's old ancestor came up, he saw a huge treasure ship. There were many experts on it, and the aura they exuded was very terrifying. Especially the experts standing in the front row, they released a power that made the spirit race's old ancestor tremble. This treasure ship was expensive, and it was a low-grade saint artifact. Most empires couldn't afford a treasure ship with a low-grade saint artifact. In terms of price, this treasure ship was at least equivalent to a medium-grade saint artifact, not a low-grade saint artifact. "I don't know who you are, but please stop." The spirit race's old ancestor shouted loudly, signaling them to stop. Suddenly, a treasured ship came over, and there were so many powerhouses on it. How could they casually let them come over? Ah, don't be so long-winded. I advise you to surrender, or you will die. The middle-aged man sneered and said straightforwardly, Your imperial city is not bad, it will be the imperial city of our heavenly netherworld divine nation in the future, and we will start conquering this mortal world from here. As soon as he said that, the aura of a Spirit King stage cultivator quickly pressed down on Yi Tianyun's body. Many people with lower cultivation were directly pressed to the ground, unable to move. Chapter 559. A Spirit King stage cultivator's cultivation was not bad in the ghost world, but in the mortal world, a Spirit King stage cultivator was like a god above everyone else. The concentration of spiritual power here was too low, coupled with the lack of natural treasures, it was very difficult to break through. Some of the conditions allowed them to break through, but the concentration of spiritual power was too low, so they couldn't break through to a higher level. This was the only way to break through, so many strong cultivators left for the ghost world or the heavenly world. Only when they reached that level, they would know about this. Now that a Spirit King stage cultivator was attacking them, everyone's face changed dramatically. Some of them even fell to the ground, they couldn't even resist. In addition to the Spirit King stage expert, there were also a lot of Void Spirit stage experts. They looked invincible as they charged towards the Spirit King stage experts. The battle hadn't even started yet, but their morale had already dropped by half. The legendary Spirit King stage cultivator. The spirit race old ancestor took a deep breath. He had obtained a lot of resources and his cultivation had improved a little, but he was still a Void Spirit stage cultivator. Facing a Spirit King stage cultivator, he was really powerless. He could feel that his opponent could kill him with a single slap. Not to mention the Spirit King stage cultivator in front of him, even the Void Spirit stage cultivator beside him was enough to fight him. Spirit race old ancestor, what should we do? Yi Qingshuan's face was cold. She also felt that she couldn't resist the power of the Spirit race old ancestor, but it didn't mean that she would give in. Activate the Nation Defense Array. The Spirit race old ancestor said solemnly. Even if we surrender, I'm afraid that they won't let us go. They might be heading straight for us. The Spirit King's departure should be to deal with them. Yi Qingxian nodded. Yi Tianyun had told her that they were going to face the most terrifying attack, so they had to ask for help. Who would have thought that all of this would happen so quickly? They were already right in front of them. Under the command of the Spirit Race Old Ancestor, the Nation Defense Array was immediately activated. Layers of thick shields immediately appeared, wrapping the entire imperial capital tightly. Although the overall arrangement of the divine runes was not completed, most of them were engraved. Regardless of whether it was done or not, they could only forcefully activate it. Otherwise, if a fight broke out, they would be the ones who would suffer the most casualties. When they activated the Great Nation Protecting Array, the experts on the treasured ships looked at them with disdain. Lord Su, they actually want to resist? They're overestimating themselves. The Void Spirit stage powerhouse on the side sneered. This nation-protecting Grand Array was nothing to them. How strong could the mortal realm's Grand Array be? Su Guilin looked at the formation and sneered, since they want to resist, then let them resist. I will let them know that meaningless resistance will only increase the casualties. Immediately, Su Guilin flew out and flew towards the Heavenly Cloud's imperial capital at an extremely fast speed. In the blink of an eye, he was already in front of the Heavenly Cloud's imperial capital, waving his palm and slamming it down. Break! Su Guilin let out a long roar, and his palm flashed with a golden light. An ancient aura was released from his palm, and in an instant, thick clouds gathered in the sky. Then, a huge palm broke through the clouds and slammed down on the Heavenly Cloud's imperial capital. The giant palm instantly covered more than half of the Heavenly Cloud's imperial capital, and the terrifying power made everyone's face change. Is this the power of the Spirit King stage? Boom! The giant palm slammed down heavily, setting off a violent explosion. The entire Heavenly Cloud's imperial capital was filled with the sound of explosions. Even the earth trembled because of the explosion. It seemed that this power did not belong to the mortal realm, but it was displayed in the heavenly cloud's imperial capital. The cultivators who stayed far away from the heavenly cloud's imperial capital trembled and looked at the heavenly cloud's imperial capital in horror. I don't know what kind of power the heavenly cloud's imperial capital provoked, but it's so powerful. They gasped and felt cold from head to toe. They originally wanted to join the heavenly cloud's mansion, but now they didn't even dare to get close to it. After the explosion disappeared, the heavenly cloud's imperial capital was still standing. Apart from the explosion, the heavenly cloud's imperial capital was still intact. It was a powerful palm of the Spirit King stage, but the heavenly cloud's imperial capital was able to withstand it. Oh, interesting. I didn't expect that there would be a divine rune master of such a level in the mortal world. Su Guolin's gaze turned cold. Although he didn't use his full strength, he had at least used more than half of his strength. Who would have thought that he wouldn't be able to destroy the great array of the mortal world? The other cultivators of the heavenly netherworld divine nation were shocked. They didn't expect that the heavenly netherworld divine nation's divine rune master couldn't break the imperial defense great array. Great! We didn't get breached. The spirit race old ancestor is so powerful. He can hold on. Yes, we can defend the heavenly cloud's imperial capital. Their hearts, which had been filled with despair, were suddenly filled with hope. Although the imperial defense great array could withstand it, the spirit race old ancestor who was standing on the city wall was pale. His hands flashed with dazzling light, and he kept making hand seals. In order to withstand the palm, he had consumed most of his spiritual power, and he almost couldn't hold on anymore. As expected of the power of the Spirit King stage, the spirit race old ancestor's face was pale, and he almost fell. Fortunately, Qingxian supported him and said worriedly, "Old ancestor, are you all right? This power is too strong. If our imperial defense great array was engraved properly, we might be able to hold on for a few more times, but now, I'm afraid it won't be able to hold on for more than 3 times. Quickly take the people and escape, I will hold them off." The spirit race old ancestor said solemnly. "But, no buts. Hurry up and leave. It's more important to save our lives. We must hold on until the Spirit King comes back." Unfortunately, the Spirit King didn't even see the heavenly cloud's imperial capital, and it was already occupied and destroyed. The spirit race old ancestor shook his head, but he didn't despair. He knew that as long as he preserved his strength and waited for Yi Tianyun's return, there would be a chance. As long as the people were still alive, the heavenly cloud's imperial capital would never be destroyed. Old ancestor. Yi Qingxian gritted her teeth as she knew what to do. Finally, she knelt down in front of the spirit race old ancestor and kowtowed. "Old ancestor, take care." After kowtowing, she immediately rushed down and was ready to leave with the people. At this point, it was the only thing she could do, otherwise, no one would be able to leave. Just as they were about to leave, the cultivators on the treasure ship surrounded them. Just a few void spirit stage experts were guarding in all directions, and they had already blocked their escape route. "You want to escape? That's impossible." They smiled coldly. They had come prepared, so how could they let them escape? The danger is getting closer and closer. Tianyun feels something is wrong while flying. He always has a sense of crisis hanging in his heart. Chapter 560. The heavenly cloud's imperial capital was completely surrounded, and there was basically no way to escape. Even if they could fly, it would be useless. There were a lot of enemies who could fly, especially core transformation stage powerhouses. They would definitely be able to crush them easily. Fortunately, the heavenly cloud's imperial capital didn't have all of its forces here. Many forces had gone to other cities to manage. After all, there were many cities in the Netherworld Empire that could be directly managed. Under their management, and with the eradication of a lot of bandits, a lot of residents came to the imperial capital. Especially those from the heavenly border continent and the earthly border continent. Previously, this place was a dangerous place, and no one dared to come here at will. Originally, this was the territory of the Netherworld Empire, So who would dare to come here at will? Most of the people here were vicious people, and they would kill if they didn't agree. Therefore, this place was simply a paradise for crime. There were many people here whose hands were stained with innocent blood. In order to escape the pursuit of their enemies, they all fled to the netherworld continent. Now that it was occupied by Yi Tianyun, there was a big cleansing, as if he wanted to wash away the smell of blood in this place. This made the Heavenly Clouds continent lively, and many cultivators came to join the Heavenly Clouds mansion. They wanted to join as soon as the Heavenly Clouds mansion was upgraded to the Heavenly Clouds Empire. Otherwise, it would be more difficult for them to join. Because of this, many forces split up. Who would have thought that there would be so many experts coming to kill them? However, they knew that it was the wisest choice to split up, or else they would be wiped out. Want to escape? Do you think it's possible? Su Guolin's eyes were like torches. He could see every detail in the imperial capital, so it was impossible to escape from under his eyes unless he was alone. However, there were thousands of cultivators who came here, and they could definitely crush everything here. I will give you one last chance. Choose to surrender obediently, or you will be killed. Su Guolin looked at them coldly and gave the final ultimatum. If you surrender obediently and swear to become our slaves, I will spare your life, and you can become stronger under the protection of the heavenly netherworld divine nation. They didn't want to kill all of them because they wanted to build a better city. They had just arrived in the mortal world, and they had too few people. In order to do things better, he had to recruit these cultivators for his own use. When the time came, he would let them charge and break through the enemy lines. It would be a very suitable choice as cannon fodder. Don't even think about it. The old ancestor of the spirit tribe said coldly, I would rather die than become your slave. They didn't want to die, but that didn't mean they were afraid of death. They had faced the danger of death before, but they still survived. However, from the looks of it, it seemed that he wouldn't be able to persevere any longer. Is that so? Then go to hell. Su Guolin sneered. He stretched out his hand and slammed it down. The terrifying giant palm fell from the sky again. This time, it was more powerful than before. Good timing. The spirit race's patriarch quickly performed hand seals, causing all the formations to release their strongest effects. The protective barriers were pushed to their limits, and the offensive formations were released. For a time, countless pillars of light shot up from the ground. Due to the suddenness of the attack, several of the pillars of light pierced through several disciples with low cultivation bases, causing them to let out blood-curdling screams before falling from the treasured ship. However, most of the light beams were blocked by the giant palm. No matter how they attacked, it was futile. Immediately after, the giant palm slammed on the Heavenly Clouds' imperial capital, causing the earth to tremble again as if the world was about to collapse. After the explosion, the Heavenly Clouds' imperial capital was still standing, and the Imperial Defense Great Array was still intact. However, the divine runes had started to crack, and it looked like they were about to collapse. It was undeniable that the divine runes carved by the spirit race's patriarch were very powerful, but his cultivation base was too low. He couldn't hold on for too long in the face of a Spirit King stage expert. It was already quite amazing that the divine runes were able to withstand 2 palm strikes. He even counterattacked and killed a few cultivators. Although their cultivations were a little low, it was better than not killing a single person. Bastard! Su Guolin was furious. Not only did he fail to destroy the Great Array, but he also killed a few of his own people. Although it wasn't a big deal, it was still a humiliation. It seems like I have to use my full strength. I didn't want to destroy the city too much, but it seems like it's impossible now. Su Guolin kept his strength because he didn't want to destroy the city. Before he came here, he said that he wanted the city to be the imperial capital, so he didn't want to destroy it. Immediately, Su Guolin's strength surged, and a shadow of a giant bear appeared behind him. It waved its huge palm and slammed down again. Boom, boom, boom. The violent explosion sounded again, and it was several times more terrifying than before. The ground outside the imperial capital cracked, and it looked like it was going to collapse at any time. However, after the explosion dissipated, the Great Array was still not destroyed, and it was still tenaciously holding on. It was really terrifying. How is this possible? Su Guilin was shocked and angry. He didn't expect that they still couldn't break through the imperial capital. Was the mortal world really that strong? If he observed carefully, he would find that all the spirit race's clansmen were releasing their power into the Divine Rune Great Array to maximize the power of the Divine Rune Great Array. It was a level stronger than the Divine Rune Great Array released by the spirit race's old ancestor. However, such a terrifying palm strike made their faces pale. Among them, the spirit race's old ancestor even spat out a mouthful of blood. But he still stood there firmly, motionless, and stubbornly held on. Even if I die, I won't let you get away with it so easily. They had long been prepared to die. Even if they died, they had to resist their power. Good, good, good. Let's see how long you can hold on. Immediately, Su Guilin seemed to have gone mad, and he slapped down madly. Then, he slapped down several times in a row on the Great Array. Finally, with a loud bang, the Great Array collapsed in an instant. After the terrifying giant palm broke through the Great Array, it continued to move towards them. Everyone was so scared that their faces turned pale. How could they dodge it? At this time, a figure rushed up, and his whole body bloomed with the most dazzling light. It was the spirit race's old ancestor. He burned the last of his blood essence to meet the palm strike. Old ancestor! Yi Qingxian shouted with red eyes, and her heart was filled with sorrow. Boom! The spirit race's old ancestor took the palm strike head-on, and the giant palm in the air was neutralized. But the spirit race's old ancestor fell like a meteorite. Yi Qingxian saw the opportunity and quickly caught it. The heavy pressure almost made her fall. Old ancestor! Yi Qingxuan's eyes were red, and she saw that the spirit race's old ancestor was on the verge of death. I'm sorry, children. I can't protect you. Spirit King will avenge us. The spirit race's old ancestor seemed to have thought of something, and he smiled slightly. Then he died completely. Old ancestor, old ancestor. Yi Qingxian and the others' tears fell uncontrollably. All the disciples of the spirit race were crying. Their old ancestor had died just like that. You overestimate yourself. You dare to go against me? Only death awaits you. Su Guilin sneered, all of you kill your way in. Kill all the men and keep the women. Treat us brothers well. They shouted excitedly, and they all rushed forward. Yi Qingxian looked at them with hatred, and she shouted sorrowfully, Spirit King, we can't accompany you anymore. I'm sorry. They all stood up, ready to fight the enemy with everything they had. If the situation was not right, they would choose to commit suicide, or they would be humiliated. At this critical moment, a ray of blue light shot over from afar. A bunch of trash, I want you dead. Yi Tianyun's cold voice came from afar, and it pierced deeply into everyone's heart. Instantly, they felt as if they had fallen into an icehouse. Spirit King, you're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.